Since 1937, the Daytona 200 has run 82 times. And since 37, some of the sport's biggest names in motorcycle road racing have cemented themselves as legends with colossal victories. But two stand atop of the pile with 5 each. Canadian Miguel Duhamel and Mr. Daytona himself, Scott Russell. But a Californian by the name of Josh Herrin has won 3 times, including the last 2. Is that a big deal? In the 200's long history, there have been 12 different riders to win back-to-back. But right now, right here, only Josh Herrin can capture his 3rd Daytona 200 victory in a row and stand alone, with an entire field of past champs and newcomers trying to make sure that doesn't happen. Are you ready for 57 laps around the World Center of Racing? Here it is. It's time to rip up the high banks of the east coast of Florida. It's time for the Daytona 200. Capping off an outstanding Bike Week 2025 from the World Center of Racing is the MotoAmerica AMA FIM North American Road Race Championship and the 83rd running of the Daytona 200 here at Daytona International Speedway, as qualifying is done and dusted, and now we're getting ready for the world famous Daytona 200. Welcome everyone to Daytona Beach, Florida. Welcome to the broadcast booth. I'm Greg White, standing alongside 2-time national champ Jason Pridmore. Now, Jason, this race is unique. The world is watching, and it's something special.
Yeah, there's no question. As soon as the 24 season ends, Greg, there's a group of people, riders, crew chiefs, team owners, to start throwing their attention towards what is the biggest race of the year, the Daytona 200. So we're here. It's March. Everybody's excited, and let's get this thing going.
Yeah, and since this is a once-a-year event, let's go ahead and remind you of how this whole thing really works, because we have it right here. It's a solo endurance race, 57 laps. In this race, 32 riders from 6 different countries. We have a 2 pit stop strategy generally, but really what we're going to be talking about to keep that group together is that drafting on the high banks, and there is more drafting and passing done in this event than there is the entire season during the MotoAmerica year. But we talked about it at the top of the show. Josh Herrin has been the man, Jason, for the last 2 years.
Yeah, this was a restart in 2023 after Richie Escalante and Herrin got together down in turn 1. And you can see Herrin found his way back to the front, was able to draft with this big group and take his 2nd win at the time that started his opportunity to try to three-peat. We're going to go to 24 next as he celebrated there. 24 was a little bit easier for him. He had it kind of a little bit of his own way. As you see, Richie Escalante there in second spot. He would eventually run out of gas and make room for Ty Scott on the podium, but it was this guy again, 2 in a row. This would have been his 3rd overall, and he won that one a little bit easier last year, Greg, so he's back to try to defend that double this year and see if he can win the 3rd one.
So for Josh Herrin, he was a standout through the infield, but really at the end of the day, it was about these pit stops. So let's talk about what separates the Daytona 200 from a normal sprint race. Number one, you got to get into pit lane and slow it down to 60 kilometers an hour or 37 miles an hour. Only 6 riders can be over the wall. 1 has to have a designated fire extinguisher. And then you're going to do tires, you're going to do repairs, and then you're going to do fuel. That's a change we're going to talk more about, and pneumatic tools are allowed. And yesterday there was a pit stop challenge, Jay, for a ton of money. And surprise, surprise, who ended up winning this thing?
Yeah, amazing. M4 XR Suzuki team did a tremendous job to only just narrowly beat the HSBK Ducati team, Celtic Racing team of Josh Herrin.
That's going to give them a lot of confidence in this race as we kick off a couple hours worth of racing, and they are all smiles, and I'm sure that that money that they won is going to go towards some team water. But Tyler Scott, who is our pole sitter, by the way, his team ends up winning that. But for Richie Escalante, Vision Wheel M4 XR Suzuki, he gives us our look at Daytona International Speedway on our Instant 360 camera. When we come back, we're going to introduce you to some of the riders on the grid with our pit reporters and get race action underway, so don't go anywhere.
We're looking down on the grid here. Tyler Scott, our pole sitter. And Rog, we saw him just trying to relax as much as he could in the last shot that we saw, but now he's getting his game face on.
Yeah, he knows it's almost go time, but Tyler Scott has to be feeling pretty good about his chances today. He has shown really good speed all weekend, and not only has he been able to be really quick in those practice and qualifiers. He's did a lot of it by himself, and so I think that gives you a little more confidence.
I'll tell you one thing that'll give him a lot more confidence, that pit stop challenge yesterday whenever they were able to beat Josh Herrin's crew, because they saw last year the importance of being able to be fast in the pits and give yourself that best chance.
See Eli Block there, one of our Junior Cup competitors, holding the last year holding the umbrella there for Brandon Posh. You see him getting ready to get going. We talk about this race being big for everyone, but it's also really big for Brandon. You know, all the work that he put in to get here for this 200.
Critical for Brandon as well, trying to make sure you got your ride sorted for next year. No better time to come to a place where you've won twice for the biggest race of the season, and he'll be gunning for that third victory here at the Daytona 200, and one rider already on those 3 wins. Josh Herrin in the middle of the front row, just in front of Pash, and then Tyler Scott trying to get that first Daytona 200 win.
And the guy that we haven't really talked about is Richie Escalante, and I think he's for someone for sure. Just because he qualified 6th, you cannot count that guy out. He's been in the battle and the hunt for a couple years in a row. He knows how to race this Daytona track. Even though he's qualifying, they're 6th when the lights go out. I think you'll see Richie Escalante been a little uncomfortable so far this weekend, but when it matters, I think Richie's going to be there.
Yeah, Lady Luck didn't speak the right language for Richie last year, ran out of gas in that final lap, but he's going to start from 6th position on that second row of the grid aboard his Suzuki.
The Daytona 200 is brought to you by Pirelli Tire. Pirelli, power is nothing without control. And by NXT Bets. Play MotoAmerica for cash. The Daytona 200 is live on top sportsbook and DFS platforms. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. I'm Hannah Lopa. We are just moments away from the start of this race. Riders have helmets on. They are clearing the grid. This guy behind me, Peter Hickman, it is his 2nd appearance here at the Daytona 200 after some unfinished business and not finishing the race last year. He's looking to add to an illustrious list of wins. He's got 4 Macau wins, 4 Northwest 200 wins. He's got 14 Isle of Man TT wins, 7 BSB wins, and he's looking to add Daytona to that bucket list. A very talented racer, to say the least, and he's qualified 4th starting from here on the grid. Moving on up to our pole setter. He is with the 4th member of our party, Jamie Howe.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, it's the 2nd year in a row that Tyler Scott will lead this field off of the starting grid. And for Tyler Scott, his team's already won the Pit Crew Challenge. All of the work has been done. How do you manage the pressure now on your shoulders?
Yeah, the pressure's on. The lights are about to go off, and I'm super excited and ready.
All right, it's time to go racing, guys.
And that's how you get that done. Look at those two on at the very last minute. Thanks to Ty Scott for doing that interview as we're getting ready to rock and roll here. Jason Pridmore, we're pretty excited about this one as we have a very important warm-up lap coming up.
Yeah, you do. These guys have already done their sighting lap. They've been sitting on the grid for 20 minutes just with some of the pageantry that goes on, and now they're just ready to go. All the nerves, you know, as soon as this warm-up lap starts, Greg, is usually when things can get a little bit more calm. At least it was like that for me. I'd get the warm-up lap started, get in my thoughts, and just think about all the things that the team and I have discussed. As we get a chance now, Greg, to look at the Pirelli track map. You're going to see them go through that turn 1. They start from pit lane, which is a little different than anywhere else we go. That first run down to the International Horseshoe, turn 3, is an important one, but getting up on that banking and going down into the chicane, turn 9 and 10 on that first lap, it's going to be important if you're 8, 9, 10, 11th in the draft that you don't get drawn into there and make an early mistake. And then it's all the way drafting from 11 to 12 all the way back down to the trial, Greg. And you can expect to see probably 8 or 9 riders in that first big wave of guys.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting to see how this race unfolds on itself. And, of course, we had 2 qualifying sessions, and then the top 12 went into a time attack. And it was Tyler Scott who goes the fastest with Josh Herrin and Brandon Posh on the front row.
Then we're going to have Peter Hickman, Richard Cooper, and Richie Escalante back on row 2. Harry Truelove, Gus Rodeo, Danny Webb, Joe Lamondre Jr., Matt Truelove, and Carl Soltis also. Carl's been riding really good this weekend. Danny Eslick, Narbonne, and Jason Farrell. Michael Dunlop, yes, that Michael Dunlop, and Alex Arango there just outside of that row 6. Then we got Wes Bauer, Spalding, Martinez. Anthony Fania again is back, Greg. Good to see him back. And Alex Michael, Shane Maggs, Chuck Ivy, Jeff Bean, Vandal, Chris Sabora, and Gillette are going to round out row number 10. And August Nord and Kyle Kircher are going to round out your field here today.
All right, so that's the NXT Bets starting grid. Boy, Jason, you know, this race has got so many complex moving parts to it. For those riders, I think one of the craziest things is on lap 1 are 2 different sections. So tell us what we can expect here right off the start.
Well, you can see how slow they're even going on the warm-up lap. It's a matter of not only just conserving fuel, conserving your tire a little bit, but off the start, Greg, you just want to get a good clean start. Get that first lap really clear, and the race really breaks into 3 segments because you have 2 pit stops in the middle. So it's a matter of the beginning of this race kind of feeling out your competition, seeing who's doing what, see who you might feel like you have the advantage over or not. But really, you're racing to that first pit stop, and when you come in the pits, it's so important that you stay as calm as you can and let your crew do the job they need to do. And that's what I think that you're going to see today with the top teams. There's 3, 4, 5, 6 really good crews down there. They're going to be able to get their riders in and out. But for this first part, for this first 18 laps or so, 17 to 20 lap window for fuel, it's just a big feel out process.
And it's a pretty crazy turn 1 because it's the only time these riders are going to get a start from launch into turn number 1, which is very interesting. And as you look at the weather here, it looks pretty good, but we know that there is rain in the area, and that would create a race stoppage. So we're not going to talk much about that, but temperature's good, wind is down. And then the other thing too, Jay, we talk about is being able to navigate the chicane off the back straightaway the first time, because that can cause a lot of riders to be hung out because it's such a massive draft. You're going to be going in there faster than you've ever gone all weekend.
Yeah, and I'm looking out the window right now, and the wind is definitely up a little bit more than it was yesterday. It's more like it was the first day, Greg, but they are clearing at the back of the grid. Here we go.
It's time for the Daytona 200, the 83rd running, as we get ready to roll, and bikes are off, and we're headed to turn number 1, and it looks like the 70 of Ty Scott is going to lead us into it on that vision wheel. M4 X-Star Suzuki.
Yep, you got Brandon Posh there as well. He jumped himself into second really, really early. A lot of Dyson and shoving around going here in the back of the pack. Everybody made it through turn 1. Now it's that first run down to the International Horseshoe, Greg. And looks like everybody's going to roll right through here pretty clean as well. Oh, had a little mix up there. That looked like Chris Sabora possibly, but he's all good. Now this fast kink, Greg, and you talked about the weather. If we have a system coming in here, that can definitely get the wind swirling around. So we'll pay attention to that, because that kink on the infield, as you can see how dark the sky is in the background there, we're going to be keeping a close eye on that as well.
All right, so on our first lap, and we're going to get our first run up onto the banking. This is going to be the big group. So who has got a good drive and who is going to use the draft? Who wants to take over the lead? So here we go. We know that Brandon Posh, last time he won it, was really cagey on this one, but he goes to the bottom on his TOBC Triumph, and he's going to take over the spot for the moment as they head down the back straightaway towards the chicane. He won't hold on to it. So now we come off the back straightaway, and it's going to be Brandon Posh, number 96, is going to take the spot under braking. Ty Scott in second, and there's Josh Herrin in third. And is that Hickey?
That's Hickey.
Hickman in fourth place.
And you can see, Greg, how big that group is still at the front of this field. You've got 12, 14 bikes, and everybody right now, all you got to try to make sure that you don't do is mess yourself up to the point where you create gaps, because sometimes those gaps can be difficult to get back through. Now, talking to Danny Eslick earlier, you'll see him there. He's up to 5th, Greg. He talked to me about he's had some struggles this week, but as he comes across the line, Danny Eslick looked like he was second to me as he came across the line from kind of further back on the grid. He didn't make it into our special time trial, and he said to me this morning, he said, Jay, it's been a mixed bag. We both agreed that that's kind of like the way Daytona is. He ain't going to be worried about a little bumping and grinding there with Ty Scott. So Danny Eslick gets that TOBC bike up into second spot.
A little bit of contact from the 69, Danny Eslick. He's won this race 4 times, and I had a chance to talk to Danny earlier this weekend, Jason, and he told me this is it. It's the 20th anniversary of the first time he's run the Daytona 200, and this will be his last. So he is looking to cement his name with some of the best as we take a look at the little bit of contact coming out of turn number 1. So all eyes on Danny Eslick as he now has that extra bit of motivation behind him while racing the Daytona 200. He wants to win the last time he's ever going to race it.
Yeah, well, we all say that, I think, at some point. I think if he wins, we might see him come back and defend that title. But let's just take it as we go right now for Danny. He's done a nice job of holding on to Ty Scott through the infield. Those bright yellow machines you'll see back there sort of in 5th and 6th place, 7th place. That's going to be Peter Hickman and Richard Cooper straight over from England on their Triumphs. You can see here they've got Brandon. It looks like Hickey now. Both these guys are hooking up, and they've got Brandon Posh in behind them. They had a great start to their 200 last year, and they've come back with a lot more knowledge. Both guys feeling really confident on those Triumphs.
Up back onto the bank, and they go. Cooper and Hickman on the PHR Performance Triumphs. Those are Street Triple 765 RSs. And one of the things about those two bikes on the right part of your screen, they're probably the best motorcycles in terms of fuel economy. So they could probably stretch that fuel window to 20. The question is, will they have tires underneath it? As the jostling continues here, as we expect for the next 18 laps, let's go down to Hanalopa.
You guys might notice the clouds are rolling in. The sky's a little bit darker than we've seen all weekend. There is a slight breeze picking up. Looking at the forecast, it looks like about 80% chance of rain at around 2 p.m. And now normally, being only on the third lap of this race, we'd say, okay, we have the luxury of time. But right now, it's really important for these guys to put themselves in the best position possible, because while MotoAmerica normally races in the rain, Daytona is the exception to that. So race will halt if it starts to rain at a certain point today. So it's crucial for these guys to push as hard as they can, as early as they can, because if we do stop and restart, they're going to need to maximize on that position. Yeah, it's definitely something that the crews are thinking about, but the riders right now, they're just going as fast as they can. And so far, Jay, it's Richard Cooper at a 150.273, has the fastest lap of the race on lap number 2. We expect that time to continue to drop, because you have the fuel load starting to drop with each lap, but then you have tire wear as well. So.
Yeah, well, right now it's pretty busy still at the front of the pack. Like I said, it's going to be like this for the first 16, 18 laps. And you just want to be able to put yourself into a spot to where when you get ready to come into the pits, there's going to be guys coming in, I'm sure, together. You talked to the team that Richard Cooper and Peter Hickman are on. They're going to have to come in at separate times. They've got one crew down there, so they're going to be coming in a little bit separate times. Another couple of guys that I had a chance to talk to this morning are Matt and Harry Truelove, also from England. Last time they were here, Greg, 2 years ago on our 6s. Right now they're running 8th. Is Matt. 10th was Harry the last time they came through. They're both in this lead group. They will be on GSXR 750s this year, as they were on our 6s 2 years ago.
So Richard Cooper had the lead for the moment, and Ty Scott comes across the stripe as the leader of that lap on his Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki. That is the GSXR 750. So you have 765 triples against 750 inline 4-cylinders against 955 Ducati twins. This is what next generation racing is all about. You're seeing it for yourself in front of your own eyes here at Daytona. And we expect multiple lead changes. There's at least been 9 lead changes since we started this race so far, Jason.
I want to keep an eye on Brandon Posh. You see him, he's quite a ways back, Greg. He's dropped, well, I mean, probably back to 10th or so. On this lap. He was 8th coming across the line. He just came into our picture right now. You can see him there in the white, Greg, and he's dropped back an awful long way. He doesn't want to lose too much contact with this lead group, but he's coming into our shot right this second. There's Brandon right now. So we're going to keep an eye on him and make sure that we don't see anything. His bike does seem like it's moving around a little bit more than maybe it should, but like you said at the beginning of the show, he played it pretty coy here a few years back when he won this race, and he might feel like he has the bike underneath him to draft his way back up to the front, but he's kind of going back a little bit too far right now.
I had a chance to check in with Brandon Posh out on the grid, and as a 2-time winner of this race back in 21 and 22, one of the things that Brandon is certainly aware of is the fact that this is an endurance race. It's all about being there at the end of the race. Even though he was able to start there on the front row, one of the things he said was, I need to take it lap by lap. 57 laps is a lot. It's going to get exhausting. The heat is now out. It's humid outside. So for him, he wanted to conserve just a little bit, but keep himself close enough to the front that he can really fight for it when we get to the end.
And speaking of fighting for it, here comes Danny Eslick, the 69, as Richard Cooper gets split by Josh Herrin and Danny Eslick. As they come into turn number 1, it's going to be TOBC's Danny Eslick who takes over the spot.
Now you can see, Greg, we're getting a small breakaway of about 6 riders. That's Danny Webb on the blue bike that you see back there, number 999. Again, I believe Danny's a former runner-up in the Moto3 World Championship years ago. Now he's been racing British Superbike over there in the BSB Series. So he's trying to bridge that gap to those 6 guys in front of him. And it looks like he's bringing one of the Truelove brothers along with him. So just these gaps, when they start to create, sometimes they can be very difficult to make back up. So you can see there right now, just getting back onto the back of this group of 6.
And you Michael Dunlop fans, keep an eye on him. Right now, he's in 9th place the last time we came by the start-finish line. So keep an eye on the number 6 Ducati.
There you go. Number 6 Ducati's just in front right now. Brandon Posh. Brandon doing a little bit of a recovery job here, but he's not that far. I mean, he's still going to be able to draft up there, Greg, but it just was worrying me for a minute there. Danny Eslick up at the front right now with Herrin. And you got both of those M4 X-Star Vision Wheel Suzuki bikes in third and fourth at the moment.
And there's a look at most wins in the Daytona 200. Of course, Eslick with 4. You have Scott Russell and Miguel Duhamel with 5. And if Danny Eslick, on the back of what he says is his last race ever in 20 years, is able to roll out in that legendary company, it would be impressive. Eslick is the fittest I've seen him in years, Jay. He was all smiles back home working as a plumber. And, you know, he told me, Danny Eslick, that it's been a pattern the last couple of years where he wouldn't race until Daytona 200. So almost a year before he's on the bike. But this year, he was able to get a bike. He was able to do a couple track days. He was able to get on the motorcycle and keep his brain fresh. So he felt for this time going on that Danny Eslick was more prepared than ever. Fastest lap of the race last time by Michael Dunlop with a 1:49.710. But let's get down to Jamie.
For Danny Eslick, he was certainly prepared coming into the race weekend, but then of course you get here and all of that can change, and you really have to get to work and dialing in a setup, and that team really had to work through all of the practice and qualifying sessions to get the bike underneath them that Danny has here for the race. They struggled with a lot of chatter, and it was really upsetting the balance that they had on the bike. They were also trying to work through which tire compound they were going to do. A different spring package for him this time around as well, so they've had to tick through all of that, and to see Danny running up front and being able to lead at times in this Daytona 200, it's great for that whole team.
Yeah, it certainly is. And he also talked about just that first session, JP, and getting that brain back up to speed.
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
You know, when you're riding the couch for a long time and you come to a place like Daytona, it can take your eyes a moment to adjust.
It can. What I'm adjusting to right now is that number 2, Josh Herrin, just tried to rip it through the infield to see if he can break these guys up, and he did, Greg. 56.8 is the fastest first split that we have seen in the race. So Herrin has taken to the front. Now it's going to be a matter of trying to just splinter these guys apart. They don't want to let him keep leading down through turn 1, because I think Herrin's bike looked pretty damn solid this weekend through the infield. As you see now, Escalante, he probably gets a sense of what he feels too, of seeing him, Josh Herrin run up to the front. Now the two M4 bikes side by side on the banking, and they really want to try to get into that single file line so they can try to draft up to the 2 in front of them. It's going to be Richard Cooper. As you can see, he's right behind Herrin, and Richard Cooper is going to draft back past Herrin as they come across. And look at how far back Escalante came to get himself in that spot as well.
So Richard Cooper takes over the lead from Josh Herrin. And Josh, if he wants to try to do that same thing through the infield again, is going to have to make quick work of the 147. But it's going to be Cooper who's going to lead us through the International Horseshoe. And there is that bike you were talking about, 999. Danny Webb now has joined this group.
Yeah, and if you look at the times, that time through, 50 flat for Herrin. That was the fastest lap of the race for him. 49.9, fastest lap of the race for Cooper. So that's splitting that little group apart. You can see they're just trying to splinter these guys, and you're really going to see it in probably, Greg, Herrin out of the seat a little. You're going to see it over the next 5 or 6 laps. You'll start to see tire wear come into play just a little bit more as we get closer and closer to this first window of opportunity to pit.
Jason, for Richard Cooper specifically, this being his second go-around here at Daytona. Last year, he did also lead laps. Unfortunately, he crashed out of the race and was unable to finish. But he told me that last year he was so aggressive in trying to get to the front as early as he possibly could that he just didn't have the patience. He was pushing a little bit too hard. So he kind of had a whole year to think about this and plan ahead of how he really wanted to attack this. And obviously, it's so important to get out front and lead laps here at Daytona. Obviously, he utilizes the draft to his advantage because of his size, only 5'4", 5'5", about 154 pounds, but also just being a little bit more patient throughout the race and staying consistent as possible.
It's a great report, Jamie, because it's so difficult as a racer and as a rider to be able to discipline yourself in that way. And the greats like Scott Russell and Miguel Duhamel and the guys that have won this race a lot always did a very good job at disciplining themselves and understanding that it isn't this lap that's the most important, it's the 57th.
Across the stripe one more time. We have 50 laps to go here in the Daytona 200. Race action rolling on. We'll have more on the other side of this quick break.
Richard Cooper still continuing to lead the way here in front of Josh Herrin, and we saw Coops drop to the back of this group in the early stages, Raj, but able to use that draft to move himself back to the front really efficiently on the 147.
Yeah, and he really did it good patiently too. He got a really bad start early on, slid down to about 10th place, and now he's controlling the pace, really putting in some good laps and just being consistent. Like he said, you know, last year at that mistake he's had all year, and he's really, you know, just looks like he's trying to settle in. You see Tyler Scott, everybody's looking around. You see they're trying to figure out where everybody is. Brendan Posh was a couple seconds back, and he's kind of closed down.
Yeah, at the start of this lap, it was 1.8 seconds between Michael Dunlop, you can see there on the number 6 Ducati, and the back of the group with True Loves, and suddenly they're right there with them as well. So everyone really is closing up at this stage. And when you look at that lead group, Danny Eslick up there, really strong start for Danny. We heard from Greg White. This is going to be his last 200, trying to go out in style.
Yeah, I talked to Danny this morning as well, told me the same thing, his last 200, and man, can never count him out at Daytona. He comes here and looks kind of, didn't even make the top 12 in qualifying, and now he's out here in the lead pack. Peter Hickman, another guy, kind of was in this lead pack early on, fell back a little bit, but just did fastest lap of the race, a 49.5. So you can see all these guys are fighting hard to make sure they get back in that lead draft.
Yeah, trying to just make sure we're able to stay in that draft. You can see the number 70 there of our pole setter, Ty Scott, trying to run around the outside of Eslick. But Eslick on that Triumph, he's got good drive, uses that draft well, as Josh Herrin on the number 2 Ducati tries to run around the outside, and Richard Cooper on the run towards the end of the lap and then down in towards turn 1 here. Coop's able to hold off the charging Ducati, but look at that lead group here as we start the 9th lap of 57 here at the Daytona 200, and counting down towards that end of the first stint. It's Richard Cooper leading the way from Josh Herrin and Ty Scott.
Welcome back to Daytona. 49 laps remain in the Daytona 200, the 83rd running here in 2025, and Richard Cooper on the 147 leads the way as this group has really started to sort itself out, JP.
You essentially right now, Greg, you've got 11 people in this front group. They've just dropped Joe Lamondre Jr. and Gus Rodeo back a little bit. You'll see 2 bikes in the background that have just kind of lost touch. That's going to be Peter Hickman at the back of this group with Michael Dunlop straight in front of him. So both True Love brothers, you see them right in the middle of that pack in the blue leathers. They are both drafting and redrafting off each other and just keeping themselves in that good spot. Spoke with them, if you remember watching our qualifying show a couple days ago, how bad the bikes were moving around on the banking. The team went to work on that right away. They both said to me this morning, they said, there's no way, Jason, that we could have been able to do 57 laps the way we were doing. And they heard my comment about how scary that would have been. The bikes were moving around a lot. Look, their bikes look much better now, and it'll be a much easier ride for both Matt and Harry Trulove back there in about 5th, 6th right now.
And while we were on our way to break, Peter Hickman had set the fastest lap of the race on lap number 7 at a 1:49.532. And of course, last year, the fastest lap of the race was Escalante at a 1:48.625. So right now, Jay, this is one of those weird situations with the Daytona 200 where in this first session before, or this first kind of stint before we get into the pit stops, everybody's just trying to sort themselves out on speed. Do I have the ability to run? And then what's going to happen?
Yeah, we'll see here. Herrin's gone back to the front as they go to the infield. Let's see if he tries to throw down another quick qualifier type of lap to try to split these guys up again. We'll keep an eye on this as this lap continues, because when he goes to the front, it seems like it does seem to splinter things ever so slightly. I mean, look, Greg, the first 2 guys, 3 guys now are just breaking away from Danny Eslick a little bit, and you can see that gap again for Herrin. He's got his head down. I'll be keeping an eye on this first split as he gets into the second horseshoe, just a little bit hot. Isn't really going to affect him too bad, though. Let's go that lever, gets the bike turned. Yeah, that's what he's doing. You can see when a rider looks back like that, he's just curious to see if he's done anything to this group.
Wow, Jay, and I have to say, tip of the cap to Richard Cooper. I talked to him yesterday about his performance through the infield, and he said, you know, my teammate Peter Hickman is killing me through the infield. I've got to make improvements. And he was close enough to Josh Herrin on that big run to make it happen. But Herrin coming off of a 1:56.589 in sector number 1. That's the fastest split. He was able to get a half a second on Richard Cooper. But now it's all about that draft and pass, as now with Josh Herrin in the lead, it's got to be Ty Scott on the Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki, who takes over second from Richard Cooper as they close the gap on Herrin. Now the one, sorry Jay, the one thing to keep in mind too is that in our Super Sport Next Gen rules, one of the big changes from 24 to 25 is now the allowance of adjustable triple clamps as well as adjustable rear of the motorcycle components. And so Josh Herrin's bike is different from it was last year, way more comfortable for him to do that pace in the infield.
Yeah, and you can see the franticness that starts when Josh leads through the infield. He's going to lead him again now down into the infield, and that's going to give Josh a big boost of confidence. Even though Ty Scott was able to draft by Richard Cooper on that back straightaway and draw up onto the back of him, Herrin right now leads them through. He does a minute 49.6 this time, and you're going to see the front end of his bike just doing a lot of the work. This is turn 6, the lap prior, but he's going to get a second chance here as he comes off of his personal best lap, Greg. And you got to remember, he did that lap pushing his own wind the whole lap. So he's going to put his head down again through this infield and see if he can do the job again. Richard Cooper, Greg, like you said, it seems like he's really found a way to kind of manage that gap in the infield and not let it get it too big.
Yeah, and really the Daytona 200 is about where am I strongest, where, you know, if I can just hold on. So the teammates back together.
It's a little harder for them, though, doesn't it?
100%.
Just a little bit harder for Ty Scott and Escalante once that these, 56.4 that time for Josh Herrin. So the splits in the first split that Greg and I look at are generally in the 57s. Herrin's gone 56.5 and 56.4 the last 2 laps. Now you put that to Ty Scott and Escalante's 57.3. He was almost a full second quicker in that first split.
So Josh Herrin is trying to make a break before the first pit stop, which still is a few laps away. We have 46.5 laps to go here in the Daytona 200. Don't go anywhere.
Side by side, the two Suzukis, and Ty Scott just trying to hold off his teammate Richie Escalante. But Rog, right now we're starting to see Josh Herrin try and put that hammer down, open up a bit of a gap. But in the second half of the lap, everyone able to come back to him.
Yeah, with that draft, everybody's kind of able to close back up, but he is really ripping the infield part of this track. You can see now the top 4 have created a little bit of a gap. Richie Escalante, fastest lap of the race, 49.2. The top 4 guys have definitely lowered this pace, and you can see what it's did to the pack.
Yeah, they've opened that gap now, and you can see for Escalante on the yellow plated 54, just moving himself up into second. But Rog, that's costing them time now in the one area of the track where we know Herrin's strong. Look over the shoulder for Herrin. He's able to see a bit of lap traffic in front of him as well. 12 laps into 57 here at Daytona.
Yeah, and you can see Josh has his head down again, looking back and seeing where he had a little bit of breathing room. Now we get into lappers, and it's going to come down to where you catch him. This guy did a great job getting out of the way, but look at Josh. You can just see how hard he is pushing.
And you can see here for Escalante trying to go with them at this stage. We saw the last couple of laps, Josh Herrin with the fastest first sectors of all in both of the last 2 laps. Let's see what it is as he comes through the split. Now just back out onto the oval. A little bit slower on this lap, but a lot faster than his rivals there. They've lost time with that traffic rush.
Yeah, he tied his best, which was the fastest of the race, but was over a second quicker than Tyler Scott in that first sector. So these guys need to quit battling and make sure they work together.
Yeah, you can see it there, the gap, and also traffic on the way into the chicane. We'll see if they're able to clear it. And the lap traffic just being stood up, but looks like Richard Cooper's lost that. Tyler Scott has just ran through that chicane as well. He'll have to give up a spot for that, and that's just going to let the gap open up to Josh Herrin.
You can see Tyler Scott kind of tapping the back of the seat like, just follow me.
Yeah, just follow me. But as it is right now, they're trying to just chase down Josh Herrin using the slipstream here. Richard Cooper on the 147 machine around the outside of Ty Scott.
Racing continues with about 45.5 laps to go. Actually, 45 laps to go here in the Daytona 200. And some things happened while we were at the break. One of them is the number 70 of Ty Scott on that Vision Wheel and 4X Star Suzuki had a little off-track excursion in the chicane. And the AMA FIM North America folks are going to be looking at that to see if he needs to give up a position or 1 second. He needs to slow down. So they're going to be taking a look at that and see if there's any penalty. But Jay, Josh Herrin is starting to break this field into pieces.
Yeah, this is the story so far. Josh Herrin decides, you see Scott go a little bit wide. He's able to use a little bit of that runoff there. They came upon a back marker going into the chicane. But what has happened is Josh Herrin has put the pressure on everybody else by running 56.4 for his last 2 splits in this infield section. And that has given him that gap that he needs. And while the other 3 were playing around a little bit, the second fastest guy on the infield at one time was Richard Cooper. The second that he wasn't the second fastest guy through the infield, and the M4 guys got involved, these guys started dicing a lot, and now Herrin goes 56.2. So he's gone even quicker, and to put that in perspective, almost a full second quicker than Cooper, 56.8 by Ty Scott, 57.2 from Escalante. So he was still a second quicker than Escalante in that first split.
And he's doing it comfortably in the sense that he said last year in order to do this and maintain this pace through the infield lap after lap, it was extremely difficult to do, and he had to be really focused. But now, with the adjustment of the adjustable linkages in the rear suspension and the adjustable triple clamps up front, making that bike a little bit more comfortable, Herrin said it was so much easier for him to do those times in the infield. So Herrin right now on the push. 56.2, as Jason mentioned, the fast through sector number 1, and he goes his personal best through sector number 2. Meanwhile, these two guys are trying to figure it out. How do we work together right now to try to reel in Ty Scott, as Ty Scott's out there pushing his own air now, as Escalante is going to go right up the inside comfortably on Cooper. And Jay, we could tell from the fastest lap of the race that the first few laps of this race, nobody's hair was on fire in terms of these front four. And now that Herrin has decided, hey, look, I've conserved fuel for about 10 laps. Now I'm going to pull the pin and see who's got it. That's 49.1.
That's the best feeling in the world when you look back over your shoulder and you see that you've created this gap that you've wanted to create. And also see where these guys get back markers is also going to be another giant key to the success that Josh Herrin could possibly have. Because with every back marker that you go through, that gets the back marker thinking about the next group of people, and they could be moving around and this and that. But Herrin goes 49.122, fastest lap of the race last time by, Greg, and that is extremely telling. Like we said, another lap in the 56s in that first split. The only other rider that was there was 0.3 slower, and that was Ty Scott at a 56.9.
We're getting close to our first pit stop window, the window where riders are going to be coming in. So let's talk about it briefly, Jay. The pit stop rules have changed from last year to this year. They now align themselves with the World Endurance Championship. So before, you could actually fuel the bike while your crew was working on the bike. That has now changed for safety reasons. You come in, the bike goes up on the stand, whether it's rear only or rear and front. The team can work on the bike. They can make any changes, but then everybody has to get away from the motorcycle, no hands on, and they can fuel it, and then they can let them go. So pit stops are going to be longer than they were last year because of the order of operations and how things happen. But this is when things could totally separate in this race. If Herrin has a clean pit stop, everybody's got to be shaking their head. So for Herrin, Ty Scott, Escalante, Cooper, Danny Eslick now leading this group. He goes in. We have that window opening up right now, and it should get pretty frantic down there on hot pit lane.
You look at the last lap of this group here, for instance, okay, our leader goes 49.9 that last time by. From Danny Eslick back, we're in the 51s, all the way back to Matt Truelove, and Michael Dunlop actually went 50.9. But Josh Herrin's doing these 49s on his own. Tyler Scott was a little quicker that last time than was Herrin, so we'll keep an eye on that. But this group here, they've kind of all lost touch with everybody, and in this group is Danny Eslick, Harry Truelove, Pete Hickman, Danny Webb, Posh, and Matt Truelove, and Michael Dunlop is at the back of this group right now. Michael Dunlop's second in line to the back of that group right now. But this guy here, he's just put his head down, and he's obviously done some long runs as well. Ty Scott is doing everything right now to try to catch him as Herrin continues to pack on the pressure in that infield section with another red sector at 56.2. 0.3 of a second quicker than Ty Scott and Escalante. So even though Scott is trying to get back to where Herrin is, it was 1 second when they came across last time.
And good news from race control. No further action for Tyler Scott. He did everything that he needed to do after he ran the chicane. So it's racing as usual for Ty Scott. So the Celtic Economy Lube Plus Tire Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati of Josh Herrin pulled the pin, and he's now settled into about a 1 second margin. Although Herrin once again, Jason, goes sector 1, fastest time of the race at a 56.259 to that 30.8 in sector number 2. Now for Ty Scott and Richie Escalante, they did their personal best in the infield sector number 1, but it was still 0.3 of a second slower than Josh Herrin is now. It goes 49.1 for Herrin, 49 flat for Ty Scott, and 48.835 for Richie Escalante, fastest lap of the race.
Yep, and then you still got this gigantic battle behind. the lead group that is kind of split away. So Peter Hickman takes to the front of this group. Now in front of our leaders, Greg, there's about 4 back markers or 4 riders that they're going to be coming up on this lap that could definitely splinter things up just a little bit more. So while we're watching these guys running around together, they're going to be seeing the leaders just kind of disappear. See, there was nobody out in front of these guys. They are now some 9 seconds back, 9.2 seconds back from the leader. Is Peter Hickman right now. So this is a group of back markers that I saw these guys catching. And again, you know, Herrin looked like he got through them pretty well. These guys are going to be able to draft. Both Scott and Escalante are going to be able to draft off these back markers a little bit to try to slingshot past them.
Yeah, at this point for Richie Escalante, he needs his teammate to get closer to him so they can try to work together. And Scott goes high around the 16. He's going to get a nice little slingshot, and there's Escalante. Now a couple back, and you can see how much faster that bike is when he gets in that double draft. And it looks like Scott's been able to close the gap maybe a 1/10 or 2 of a second. But this is all push, 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 because when you have your pit lane speed limiter, you got that 60 kilometers that you have to roll in. So there's no advantage that can really be gained in the pits from speed.
That's right.
It's all up to your crew.
Yeah, and in this second split, Greg, is where the M4 bikes are doing their damage. 30.9 for Herrin, 30.7, 30.6. So the margin that Herrin gets in that first split, these guys kind of start to draw back in that second split and that third. This time across the line, it's only 0.6. So Ty Scott and Escalante have done a really nice job here, bridging that gap back to the number 2 of Josh Herrin. And Herrin will probably have another quick look over his shoulder as he comes out of this next International Horseshoe. And because when you go through traffic, Greg, you kind of sometimes want to have a little look just to see if you've pulled away from the guys that you knew would probably be back there. Yep, there it is. There's the look back, because when you go through guys, you kind of wonder, okay, did they get balked or not? And that's what he's looking for.
This is the pit stop window has started to open on lap 17. And I would expect to see this next lap, or maybe the next 1 or 2 laps, we're going to see these riders come in. It depends on the Vision Wheel M4XR Suzuki's crew and how they want to do it. They've definitely spoken. It's rare when you see 2 riders from the same team come in at the exact same time, but it is possible.
And they've also got away from Richard Cooper, who right now is kind of on an island on his own. He's back from these guys now, 1.8 seconds behind Escalante, 2.5 seconds off of the lead. Now, Escalante drafts by Ty Scott. Now these guys literally just don't need to mess with each other as they get down to the end of this back straightaway. And you see Ty Scott lets his teammate take to the front of this. Now what they'll be able to do is they're going to be able to, Ty Scott will slingshot back past Escalante, and he'll have a big head of steam. And don't be surprised if by the time they get back to the tri-oval that we see Ty Scott right up the back of Josh Herrin. See that draft as it works now? And then Escalante will move up into the draft behind him. And now they're going to draw up onto the back of that number 2 Ducati as they get to the tri-oval, and Escalante's in the pits.
So Richie Escalante out of 3rd place, coming into the pits. Ty Scott remaining out. And so he's getting close to Josh Herrin as they'll continue to circulate. So first pit stop for one of our front runners. Here he comes, 60 kilometers per hour. As he comes into the pits, we take a look on the left part of your screen of live action. Josh Herrin and Ty Scott out front. But keep an eye on the right part of your screen as here he comes into the pits. Is it going to be a nice clean pit stop? Very specific on how you get there.
Richie Escalante off the bike. The crew now getting to work. This is the crew that was able to compete in the pit stop challenge, and they've been practicing these pit stops, Chris Ulrich said, over 1,000 times, getting ready for this Daytona 200 event. And this is where you see the difference. All of the work had to be done on that motorcycle, tire changes included, before the fuel could go in. Very calm, very calculated, nobody in a hurry. Richie Escalante back out after a clean stop, Greg.
Yeah, that looked really good. And that one right there, too, is that yellow line was the one that breaks that speed limit. So this outlap is going to be critical for the team and for Richie Escalante, as Ty Scott had caught Josh Herrin, but Josh Herrin did the thing that he does. He gets through the infield 0.8 of a second quicker. than Scott did.
And I'll tell you, when you're coming down pit lane going that slow, and you're standing there as a rider after coming off the banking doing 180 mile an hour, it feels like it takes an eternity, and you have to remind yourself that the same rules are going to apply for everybody. So you want to make sure not to break any speed limit rules, nothing silly when you come in and out. Matt Truelove also made a pit stop on that last lap as well, so we'll take a look and we'll see. I'm sure Harry, his brother's going to be coming in on this lap. As you see Herrin duck down under the yellow line, Ty Scott continues around for one more lap.
Wow, so Ty Scott out there getting 19 laps out of this fuel. Pretty impressive. But here comes the Ducati rider, Josh Herrin, on that Celtic Economy Lube Plus tire. Warhorse HSBK Ducati will come down pit lane. It looks like he's just kind of stretching out a little bit.
I talked to Josh a little bit about this, and it's crazy because your neck on the bankings from having to be in the tuck for so long, yeah, that's where it hurts your neck.
I wonder, tapping his head though, as he goes down there, he might have run out of fuel or something. Here we go.
Gets himself a drink there, Greg. You see they have the drink waiting for him. Guys are already done with the tires. Fuel goes in, and this is where you can shine on these outlaps. You see Ty Scott on the left there going down into turn 6, and Herrin jumps up onto the bike now, and he's going to get this first outlap, and we'll see what that first flying lap will be when he comes through, as you see Peter Hickman. Hannah?
He's on his way back out. The team anticipated him to come in a lap ago. However, they seem calm, cool, and collected during that stop. Really efficient pit stop from the team, and they told me they gained so much experience last year, including getting some new things for quick change parts for this season, but they also learned a lot yesterday during the pit stop challenge. They actually watched what the other teams were doing, went back to the garage and practiced it. They found about 3 seconds of time on their pit stop, and it definitely paid off. Really great pit stop by the team.
Yeah, so really the pit stop challenge was a great benchmark for that team to find out where they are, and so they were able to make improvements. Awesome. This guy's still out. Yeah. 19 laps on this tank. We expect him to drop down off the bank and to come in next time around for Ty Scott.
He's on the banking that he'll start dropping down now, Greg, and he'll get down underneath this yellow line any minute. If that is the case, you can see him. He's on his way into the pits. So for Ty Scott, I think he did a really nice job there. He kept the power on for a long time. Now he's got to get this number 70 really slowed down. And those are the kind of little things, and we'll see what happened there, but those are the kind of little things you really got to get it slowed down, but man, is it hard to do. Michael Dunlop had also pitted, as had Harry Truelove that last lap through.
And Jamie's down there with Scott.
And as Tyler Scott makes his way down pit lane all the way to get to this Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki team, they were expecting him one lap ago. Might not seem like a whole lot, but they had the tire warmers on over the wall. They had to take these tires that they're going to put on the bike back and put them back on the tire warmers. So just a little bit out of the routine of what they would have liked. But this team, we talked about it when they were in last time, over 1,000 practices. A little bit of a delay on that rear tire. You cannot start the fuel until that rear tire, all of the work is done on the bike. Fuel going in now. Tyler did get a drink of water, and they're able to get him out, but it was not nearly as quick as the stop for Richie Escalante.
Kind of see they had a little bit of a problem. Jamie was talking about getting that rear wheel in and even getting the fuel in on that first try. It took 2 or 3. Richard Cooper also pitted. So
and Josh Herrin's coming around right now. Yep. So this is what we're looking at for the lead. So as Ty Scott comes out, watch in a moment, you're going to see Josh Herrin coming in. He's got to take the long way out of pit lane on the left part of your screen. There's Josh Herrin right there. So the pit stops proved to be relatively equal and pretty incredible by both teams as Herrin has a look over his shoulder and he's like, oh man.
And you can see Escalante a little bit further back. Escalante's back, but when you start to look at the winners, it's Herrin and Ty Scott, that their teams did the best job getting them in and out, and this first flying lap. Look at right now, Herrin is up to speed, and he's on his way, Greg. Ty Scott is trying to get up to speed as quickly as he can.
Gotta be careful, though.
You're 100% are exactly right. Richard Cooper now back in touch with third. Now, Escalante and Richard Cooper in a perfect world here, they need to use each other to get back up to the front of these two. If they just keep running around the bankings by themselves, it's going to be very difficult for them to catch back up to that lead duo. But even that said, right now, Josh Herrin, he's probably got a pretty comfortable lead, Greg, as he heads down into the chicane.
The good thing about Daytona when you're coming out of the pits too, Jay, is that those tires get up to speed awfully fast with all the friction on the banking. So Ty Scott has got some work to do as the TOBC riders are in at the same time, in and out. So Posh in the pits, here he comes. TOBC with a big crew. You can see the dual pit stops right now. Again, the rule is you can get in, you got to do the tires, you got to do the work before you do the fuel. once all that stuff is done, you see the fuel hanging up on the right, on the bike on the right, bike on the left. Now, once the crew calls, we're off. Nobody's touching the bike. Grab the fuel, and then once the fuel is indicated in, as it is right now, so a little bit of a fuel delay for Posh.
Brandon, yeah. Denny Essick is out, and now he's got to go by himself. You see, he was hoping that they could go out together, and they're not going to be able to be quite together now. So Brandon Posh is going to be put under the gun here a little bit more to try to go after his teammate. While that was all happening, Herrin and the other leaders had already come across the line grade. He's already through the International Horseshoe. And looking at his last time, 49.3 last time by for Herrin.
So as this race starts to sort itself out, this is kind of the second version of the Daytona 200. Who was able to get in and out of the pits well, and Josh Herrin with an advantage. So all the work that Herrin was able to do in that first stint really paid off for him and his team. So now Herrin has it his way. He's going to be pushing his own air, but we'll wait for timing and scoring to get their situation sorted out. It's very tricky when we have timing and scoring with pit lane, but after about 2 laps, we'll know exactly who's where. But we still have 36.5 laps to go in the Daytona 200. We'll be back as race action continues.
The first round of pit stops done and dusted here, Rog, and we were able to see for Josh Herrin able to open up a little bit of a lead there, around about a 1.5 seconds over Ty Scott. And pit stops, we've already seen it now, the lead group is shaking out.
Yeah, and really all 4 of the top 4 guys really had a decent pit stop. Even shout out to Richard Cooper's crew. They got him in and out really good as well. So no big issues. Josh Herrin's team was just a little bit quicker, but Josh is also really good on that very first lap of getting up to speed really quick.
We saw from Ty Scott in that number 70 machine whenever he left the pits, though, pushing really hard through pit exit on that long left, the long right-hander before coming back on the track behind Josh Herrin. Last time around, it was actually Ty Scott, around about a 1/10 of a second faster than Herrin. The gap now, 1.4 seconds. Herrin in that number 2 machine. We saw him as well, Rog, trying to stretch out a little bit there as he was coming down pit road.
Yeah, and you can just see your neck here at Daytona catch so much wind. It gets so tired, it gets fatigued. It also can get a cramp. So you can see Josh, the Ducati is small. It's hard to get behind that bubble. Richard Cooper last lap did his best lap of the race, so he's really trying to latch on here to Richie Escalante, and those 2 guys are trying to chase down Josh Herrin as they start to get into a couple more lappers.
Yeah, Coops might be one of the smallest riders in the field, but with a full tank of gas and a fresh set of tires, he's able to put in a really good lap last time around, a 49.1. So matching the same pace as Josh Herrin. The gap between the top 4, right about that 4-second mark. So we'll keep an eye on that through the course of this stint to see whether or not it comes down. You can see for Josh Herrin, though, midway through that opening stint, put his head down, tried to open a gap over the 2 Suzukis of Scott and Escalante. He needs to do the same now again. But Josh Herrin leading the way, 1.4 seconds clear of Tyler Scott, Richie Escalante and Richard Cooper trying to give chase.
Welcome back to the Daytona 200. After a clean pit stop from the PHR Performance Team, Richard Cooper finds himself in 4th position, and he is not slowing down anytime soon. Now, we talked about the fact that he's quite small in stature in comparison to the other riders, 5'5", about 154 pounds, fully dressed. Also has 13 pounds of lead on there to meet the minimum weight requirement, and a full tank of fuel. Now, ordinarily you think maybe this would slow him down, but because of his weight, it's actually something that's going to be advantageous to him. They've been working really hard on stability of this motorcycle. It's harder to control the bike over some of the bumpy areas. Being a lighter rider has been such a challenge. So definitely being his size has its positives and negatives, but right now he is in good shape.
Yeah, he's definitely in good shape. Of course, his teammate is Peter Hickman, who's larger in stature, and that was one of the things that Cooper talked about in the infield, Jay, was being able to really wrestle the bike where he needed to, and that his teammate Hickman had an advantage through the infield. But as we look back up front, we have Josh Herrin, who is 1.1 seconds ahead of Ty Scott. Richie Escalante went a little bit faster than Herrin did, clawed back another 2 or 3/10 of a second. But really, if Escalante and Scott are going to close the gap on Herrin, they really need to try to get together. But Scott's not going to slow down and wait for Escalante. It's on Escalante to move forward. as it's Herrin, Scott, Escalante, Cooper, Danny Eslick in 5th over Hickman, Brandon Posh, Matt Truelove, and Harry Truelove with Joe Lamandry in 10th place. That's how it sorted out after pit stop number 1.
Yeah, and I want people to think about this. Every time Herrin, I feel like every time he goes into the infield, it's almost like a qualifying lap for him, as we see somebody has got their bike started. That might be Chris Sabara is who that is. Sabora. Yeah, probably ran out of gas there, pushing it on the infield. But what Herrin's doing every lap, it's like he's trying to do a qualifying lap in the infield. Look at this, 56 flat from Richie Escalante. So 56.1 for Herrin. He has been consistently the quickest in the infield. That time through, though, Escalante almost matched him and has gone quickest second split, and he gained over half a second on his teammate in front of him, which is Ty Scott. So this is going to be a fast lap for Richie Escalante coming up in 3rd place.
And Jason's talking about the Sector 1 split time. When we look at that Sector 1, that's a lot of infield in Sector number 1. So a 148.565 for Richie Escalante. Herrin goes 148.872. So Herrin just set his best lap of the race, but Escalante went even better and set the fastest lap of the race so far, a 148.565. So he's clawing back a little bit of time, is the Mexican Escalante. He's 2.3 adrift, but more importantly, he's only about 1.2 seconds behind his teammate Scott. And Scott is going at a rapid pace where if these two are able to hook up, they might be able to make some inroads with the drafting and passing on the banking, because as we thought Herrin was far and away the best through the infield, Escalante showed he could do the pace.
And what happens, you have to build up to the race, you got that first stint done. When you come back in after you've been on a bike for 17, 18 laps, it's sliding around underneath you, especially towards the end of your stint. You get fresh tires underneath you, Greg. It's like a breath of fresh air, and you get a chance to get right in there. Jamie.
Anthony Fania Jr. just making his first pit stop of this race with a completely volunteer crew and one of the oldest riders in the field for Fania. He's going for a mileage record here at Daytona with the most miles in the Daytona 200. It's going to take him about 3 more attempts to do it, but he's been on fire all weekend and just so enthused to be able to make the field and be able to keep racing with all these young riders.
Yeah, he had 22 laps, did Fania, on that motorcycle when he came into the pits. Really impressive. Well, listen, we don't know if Josh Herrin heard us talking. Chances are he didn't. But Jason, in sector number 1 through the infield, Herrin just set the fastest sector split of the race again.
Yeah,
55 now, 998. So the first rider in the 55 second range in sector number 1. And he just got 4/10 of a break from Escalante, who was pushing so hard. But fastest stop of the race, reset again by Tyler Scott at a 148.464. So Ty Scott, he may have gotten held up a little bit
in turn 1, but I think he's okay. And that's an extremely fast lap. As you see, Escalante now just stuck in there behind the back marker at the moment. So all these guys at the front are setting their fast times about 6-7 laps into this new tire stint that they have.
So here at the Daytona 200, the 83rd running, Josh Herrin in there. Let's get to Jamie. What's going on with the weather down there, Jamie?
Well, down here on pit lane, Greg, you can take a look at the pit camera right now. See the rain falling pretty steadily at this point, at this particular part of the racetrack. Now, again, it is 3.5 miles
red flag.
long.
Sorry,
so
Jamie. Red flag is
now
out.
being brought out. I told you it's starting to rain just a little bit heavier, Greg.
Yeah, we don't race in the rain here, Jamie. So thank you for the heads up on that one. So we'll have to wait to see what timing and scoring does, because we know that the leaders have gotten through 33 laps for them. But we're going to have to get our official lap counter as to what happens. So it's starting to, as Jamie mentioned, rain. It's sprinkling out there. And here in Daytona, we do not race in the rain. Of course, these riders, if you're just watching us for the first time, out there on slick tires.
Yeah, they're out there on slicks, Greg. And the problem is you get up on that high banking as we're getting a little look at our weather here. You can see it's blowing over the top of us right now there at Daytona. We have some windows there, Greg, that look good, but there's one coming later on this afternoon that looks like a much bigger precipitation chance. But you get on those white lines on top of those bankings, and they're going to be slick right now, as well as some other spots on the track. So generally at super speedways, we're not racing in the rain.
Well, so here is Josh Herrin making his way around the racetrack, and he'll be coming into pit lane under red flag conditions. We're going to be back to Daytona as Danny Eslick's letting everybody know, hey, rain is falling. That's why the red flag's out.
The rain flags came out, and the red flags are right now as well, Rog. And we're only at basically 1/3 race distance right now. 24 of the 57 laps have been completed. We have to get up to 38 laps for 2/3 race distance. But for Josh Herrin, this is actually a little bit of respite after the pain that we saw him in for his neck at the end of his opening stint.
Yeah, but sometimes as well, you know, when you come in like that, it gives it a minute to actually get a little bit stiffer. So for Josh, I think he was right where he wanted to be. He had a second gap. He was controlling the race. Tyler Scott and the two Suzukis were definitely doing a great job trying to chase him down. And, you know, also with the rain like this, the paint's going to be a little bit slick when they go out. We've talked all week about the track being a little bit green as well. And this rain can wash away some of that rubber, but also some of these guys can make some adjustments if they, you know, whatever they could be struggling with.
Yeah, and there is going to be some adjustments to be made. You can see for the Ducati crew down there just getting the feedback from Josh in the pit box. Inside the Suzuki box, you can see Ty Scott here just in talking to his crew. Last time around, Ty had just set the fastest lap of the race and a new outright race lap record as well for Scott. Escalante was faster than Josh Herrin as well. So our top three were really starting to close in on one another. Scott had managed to get that gap down to under a second to Josh Herrin, but Roger doesn't count for anything now.
No, and Tyler Scott did a great job, I think, of not trying to catch Josh all in one lap. He was just slowly, methodically, couple tenths a lap, instead of trying to make that big chunk and making a big mistake. But as you said, we're going to regroup, restock, and we're going to have another big group early on.
Yeah, Josh Herrin very strong in the first half of the lap, and then the Suzuki's very strong in the second half of the lap. But we're under red flag delay here for rain at Daytona for the 200.
Welcome back to a soggy Daytona International Speedway as the skies have opened up and we have some rain on the track, which means we do not race motorcycles on slick tires around this awesome facility. So we're under a delay and we'll have to see what happens. The rain has to stop, and then JP, the wind's got to come out, because when it's windy here, it really helps to dry things out quickly.
Yeah, and I think MotoAmerica Race Direction did a really good job right off the bat, Greg, getting this thing red flagged pretty quickly.
By the way, play MotoAmerica for cash. Baggers and the Super Sport Series are now live on top sport books and DFS platforms. Scan the flow code or visit nxtbets.com/playma. See what's available in your location. Sign up, claim exclusive bonuses, and make your picks now. JP, it's been fun watching people being able to do that, huh?
Yeah, just looking at some of the odds and things have been a good time, yeah.
So the rain continues to fall here in the Daytona 200. And so riders are in the pits. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that we've seen so far today, Jason.
Yeah, very lucky. We've had a very nice, clean race up to this point. Obviously, the start was good. Had that big pack of 16 bikes at the start for probably about 3 or 4 laps. And everybody kind of took their turn. Then it was Josh Herrin just kind of starting to break away. Everybody here in these big groups, everybody's on new tires. Everybody's got a lot of adrenaline going and things like that. Herrin, looks like Herrin was gesturing to maybe Danny Eslick there, but those guys have had some history in the past, I'm sure. As you can see here, it was just a draft and repass show for a long time. And when Herrin went to the front, that's when we started to see him really put his head down through these first splits. Richard Cooper was able to get back up to him in this particular case, and yeah, it's just been kind of back and forth all the way through.
And so that was the race as it happened. And what's interesting for us, Jay, is basically we know that when the riders get up front and all this passing happens, that it's just kind of getting to that first pit stop.
It's just getting that first window, and that's what Herrin was trying to do, is trying to break the field up a little bit before that first pit stop, and he had done a really good job. Now that said, Visual M4 X-Star Suzuki group, they did a really good job getting their 2 riders out and not let Josh completely have the race his own way the whole time. But you know, the infield is where this guy here has really been doing his work.
Well, Josh Herrin has been doing all the work. He's been leading the last bunch of laps. We've had 24 laps in the books for these riders as the rain continues to fall. It looks like it's lightening up a little bit. We'll be back.
Rog, from our vantage point here, just looking out to the start-finish line, we're able to see that the rain that came down, it was fairly heavy just for a brief moment, but there's blue skies in the distance where all that weather's been coming from.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be a short delay with the weather. The sun's already popping out, as you mentioned, whenever we're watching. So I don't think it's going to take long for this track to dry, especially if the sun can pop out. It'll really get these guys going back quick. As the riders, they don't want to wait too long. They're already kind of in the rhythm. They know what they like. They know how the track is, and this is going to change a little bit. Track conditions will be a little different when they go back out.
Yeah, and also as a change for it as well, considering that we're going to only have that one pit stop as well, the teams will be able to pick up what they learned, and some of the mistakes that we saw down in pit will be able to take a lesson from that as well.
And it's almost got like a little bit of a rehearsal there with that first pit stop, and I think all the guys got to be pretty happy with the way their riders got on track and off. Now they all kind of had a little bit of a practice. We've seen some guys have a little problems, maybe coming in a little quick and stalling their bike, some on the pit entry, and now they kind of can come by and clean that up. And also, now it gives the riders the opportunity where the crews can tell them where the other rider was catching them. You know, I'm sure all the Suzuki guys will be telling them about how fast Josh is in that first split.
You can see Richie Escalante down there just being interviewed, and a little bit of insight for him down there. And it is one of those things where you're able to, as you said, Rog, understand where you need to make that step for the restarted race. And we saw for Escalante and his teammate Tyler Scott how strong they were in the second and third sectors of the lap compared to Josh Herrin, who was much stronger in that opening sector. But that'll count for nothing once we're back underway, and 24 of the 57 laps have been completed here at Daytona. Down in the pits, we've got Jamie Howe able to get us some insight for what's down there with Richie.
With red flag conditions, that means all the riders are back with their teams right now, having the chance to debrief a little bit after that first stint out there. The first pit stop's now complete. Not something we normally get, definitely not something that we wanted during the Daytona 200. But Richie, for you, over the course of the weekend, you've been working on breaking some we'll call bad habits when it comes to super sport racing, habits that you've developed in Superbike. After that first stint during this race, how happy are you with your performance?
Yeah, you know, my team Vision, William Foresta, Suzuki, my Mission Foods also support me, my personal sponsor. Yeah, working really hard this weekend. For some reason, I don't know, feel super good on the small bike. I think my crew is Superbike crew, so a little bit confused. I'm missing some feeling during the weekend, but normally I don't like practice, I don't like qualifying. I'm more racing rider, and I feel super good. My feelings back like last year, and I feel strong. I think my team also is working really good on the pit stop, so I believe I can fight for the victory. Yeah, I feel really bad for the rain, but in this track you can race in the rain. So yeah, I hope later finish the race. But I'm super happy with my team, working amazing, and now the bike is competitive, and I'm super good.
One of the things that Frank Aragaki said earlier this weekend was, with you always have the pace, and you just said it yourself, you're a racing rider, not necessarily a practice qualifying rider. But he said this year it just seems a little bit different. Everything's just been a little bit off. You got some extra laps this morning in the warm-up session. Moving through those paces, what can you continue to work on now when you do get the chance to get back out there?
Yeah. For some reason, I don't feel really good with the bike. It's difficult to say. The bike is almost pretty much the same like 23 and 24. But finally, I have some feeling. I know in the race for sure my feelings back to be competitive on the front. But it's just maybe a little bit mental too. So now I know I'm competitive, and I'm super happy with my team, working really good, and now the bike is my 750 Suzuki is amazing, and I can't wait for start again and try to win this race.
All right, that's Richie Escalante. Looking forward to the opportunity to get back out there. Steve, I'm going to have you come with me because I want to show everybody on a normal MotoAmerica race weekend, the pit stalls are set up much different than what we have here this weekend. Why? Because they need all of the equipment to be able to execute the 2 pit stops during the Daytona 200. Normally, the crew would all be sitting a lot closer to the wall. They would have their toolboxes a lot closer to the wall, making it easier to get to the things that they could potentially need during all of the qualifying sessions. Watch your step there, Steve, with the generator. But here, they need all of this wide open space. They need room for the fuel bottles. They need room for the jack stands. They need to be able to get to all of these things as well. So Tyler Scott sitting back here as well. Tyler, pole sitter coming into this race, second year in a row, but that was a fierce battle there in that opening stint of this race. What were you able to learn about the rest of the competition?
Yeah, we were a little bit slow off the start there. The pace was slow. Then I wanted to try and go behind Herrin because I figured he'd try to pull away and see if he could pull a gap. And then Richie was kind of messing with me. The gap kind of got larger. Then I was basically playing catch up for the rest of the 20 laps before the red flag.
I know you don't want to be playing catch up, absolutely. When you get back out there, though, now that you know the pace, now you know what race pace could potentially look like as we get to the second half of this race, what do you need to do?
Yeah, I feel comfortable with the pace and the whole Vision Wheel for our XR Suzuki team has done a great job on our first pit stop today. And it's looking good right now, but we just need to put in the laps, wait for the track to dry out, and see how it unfolds.
All right, we'll look forward to getting back out there. Thank you for the time, Tyler. Hannah?
Well, you guys, as you can see, the rain has lifted. It's not sprinkling too hard out here anymore. Unfortunately, it's very humid and no wind at all. If you look at any of the flags in the background, I don't know if you can see anything. It might be a little while till we can get this track dried out. So here I've got with me Richard Cooper, who was running P4 when the red flags came out. He said, in England, we don't stop when it starts raining. Richard, has everything gone according to plan so far for this first stint of the race?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we spoke with the team about finding the rhythm, finding our pace, and we was missing a little bit there onto the first initial banking. I wasn't panicking. I didn't try and catch it all back into the next corner. I just sat to my rhythm. We made a great pit stop, by far the best pit stop that we've had in all of practice, so fantastic for the team there. And I was in a good groove, you know. There's still a long way to go. We're going to make a small change to the bike now because we're allowed, so I just don't know how long it's going to be. You know, it's quite slippy on the banding on the Daytona circuit, so we need to be on the safe side of things and just be prepared when we do get to go.
What is it that you're looking for that you're making changes to the bike right now?
You know, for myself on the Dunlop tyres, we've made massive improvements. However, later on in the race, in that first stint, I just lost a bit of edge grip, which is something that I'm not used to because generally back home I ride on the Pirelli tyres. So we're just going to make some small changes to the K-Tech Rear Shock now. Hopefully find some edge grip. You know, I'm the smaller rider, so generally I get quite a bit more wheel spin than most riders. So if we could control that wheel spin and get it to go in a forward motion, I think I can hang in there.
Something that we've talked about this weekend just prior to this race is that your stature difference compared to that of your teammate Peter Hickman. You guys said if you had the opportunity that you would work together because you have some different strengths and different, not weaknesses per se, but you're strong in different areas. But because you're in different places on the track as this red flag came out, you didn't have the opportunity. Will this restart be the opportunity for you guys to kind of leapfrog and pull each other along now?
Yeah, I just had a quick debrief with Peter there, and he's, by the sounds of it, he was not far off the lead pack and then made a small mistake down the back chicane, which dropped him off the pace. Looking at his lap times, they're pretty similar to what I was doing, so without that mistake, no, for sure, me and Peter could have been working together through the infield and on the banking. Like I say, we need to get a triumph on that podium. We need to somehow get rid of one of those American bikes.
I'm not sure the American fans would agree with you, but we're wishing you the best of luck rooting for Richard Cooper. Let's get down to Jamie, who's out here in the pits with me.
Yes, Hannah, I've moved one pit stall down from M4 XR Suzuki, now down in the Ducati pit with Josh Herrin, who continues to take advantage of this time off of the bike, debriefing with his team. You see him with Bobby here as well as with Tony Romo from Dunlop Tire. He's already talked to the rest of the team and trying to figure out what they're going to do going forward in the rest of this race. And if you think back to the lap times that Josh Herrin was able to turn pretty consistently when we were under green flag conditions here at Daytona, and just the pace that he was able to set. You know, we just talked to Tyler Scott, and he said that he felt pretty comfortable with the pace. He felt like he had enough race pace in him as well. But for Josh Herrin, in that infield section, he was able to just turn it up a little bit more. And if we get a chance to talk to Josh in just a moment, we're going to see how sustainable that's going to be, Hannah. Oh, Josh just turned around now. I'm going to stay right here because I don't want to lose him. I know he's going to get into another conversation here, so we'll let this one wrap up pretty quickly. But Josh, we were just talking about the lap times and what you're able to do on the infield. How sustainable is it in the second half of the race?
Yeah, I think I would have been fine right now. You know, we had just clicked off my fastest lap of the race in the front with no carrot, no draft, none of that. You know, we're only 0.3 off their fastest time. Like I said, without that, that's a huge advantage. Just the draft alone with those guys is half second to a second, and then having the carrot there, that's a huge advantage too. So for us to be able to do those times by ourselves out in the front, I was feeling super confident. You know, I sat there first half of the stint before the pit stop and just kind of saw that we were sitting in the, you know, if we were lucky, we were doing a mid-50, you know, so I just put my head down, tried to pull a gap. I did, but just with that draft, it's almost impossible to break away. If we have the pit stop and we get a good pit stop and I break away like we did a little bit right now, then it's a different story, because Scott was, you know, a second behind me coming out of the pits. He's got to get his body and tires, you know, up to speed after the pit stop, so I have another half second there. And yeah, I was feeling good. So we clicked off my fast lap of the race as it was sprinkling down, and my strategy was to just keep putting my head down until it started dumping rain, hoping those guys lifted a little bit. And it was working, but unfortunately it just rained a little bit too much. So bike's feeling super good. I'm feeling good. And yeah, just hoping that we can get this thing done with today.
You mentioned having to get the body right after the pit stop. I've been watching you here since you've taken your helmet off. You've gone the back and forth motion with your neck a couple of times. The physicality of being on the high banks here. How are you feeling now that the adrenaline's dipping a little bit?
Yeah, you know, I got a lot of years on these guys, a lot more abuse on my body, so my neck's stiff, but that's normal. You know, it was way worse the last few years. So just trying to stay relaxed. Whenever we were in the group at the beginning, you see me sitting up on the banking. You know, I'm just trying to conserve my body as much as I can so that I'm fresh at the end, and yeah, hope for the best.
All right, Josh Herrin looking to get back out front when we get back to racing. You can see the covers are off of the bikes now out on pit lane, Hannah.
Well, Josh Herrin was saying he's got quite a lot of experience here at Daytona 200, but I'm with Joseph Lamondre Jr., and it is his first ever Daytona 200 race. Joe, how's the weekend been for you so far?
So far, the weekend's just been great. My Barcon Boss Racing team, Yamaha Racing R6, has just been on rails all weekend. You know, this is our first Daytona 200. We showed up with a lot of expectations. We know what we can do here. This is where we belong. We belong in the MotoAmerica paddock. And yeah, so this is our first time doing it. We're having a little bit of troubles right now, but we're working through it. We got another shot coming up soon, so let's see what we can do.
With that trouble in mind, how advantageous is it for the red flag to come out and for your team to have the opportunity to take this break and work on the bike and get you back in the race?
Yeah, this red flag is honestly a saving grace. I kind of lost the lead pack, but now, you know, we're right back. I'm actually starting right where I started in the beginning, so it puts us right back into the fight, see what we can do, and yeah, just try to put it up to the front.
Now, you made your Supersport debut at your home track in New Jersey the end of last year. What has your experience been on a Supersport machine between now and then?
So I'm a professional club racer. I go to all the CCS rounds riding this Barcon Boss Racing R6, and whenever the MotoAmerica riders show up, it kind of gives me some competition. And you know, we stay out there, we keep digging, hoping that something comes up soon and we're back where we belong in the MotoAmerica paddock.
What is your hope for the future? You said you don't have a ride just yet this year. Worst case scenario, will the family, I know you guys have done a lot, especially with your dad, to keep your racing program going. Will you just front a privateer effort? Could we expect to see you at least a handful of rounds if you don't find something full time?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we showed up here for. We showed up hoping to put some good results and, you know, hopefully catch some eyes of some people and try to get back out there. I mean, I'm kind of paying for this on my own, a 19-year-old kid, so I'm trying to do everything I can to make it to the paddock. So we'll see after this race. Just keep digging and see what comes up.
Talk a little bit about the crew that you have around you. I know I see your dad over here in the pits. It is a true privateer effort. Who do you have under the canopy helping you this weekend that's got you so comfortable and seemingly at ease right now, despite the issues you're having?
So honestly, for the last couple years, I've been riding the same Boss Racing R6. My crew chief, Anthony Corbo, my mechanic, Pablo, the engine builder, Uda Torres from UTR Racing, and a newcomer to the team, Colin Barton from Barcon, helping us out this weekend. I trust these guys with my life, honestly. I trust them more than I trust myself. So, I mean, I'm completely calm right now. I'm not worried at all. I know we'll get whatever's happening sorted, and we'll go out there and put up a good fight.
Let's talk about something that's a little bit different from your typical MotoAmerica race. Normally, we don't have an endurance length race, and we certainly don't have any pit stops. So how do you prepare your team and yourself for a challenge like that?
We've been practicing our pit stops whenever we can during the weekend, when I can take off work and they can stop working on the bike. Practicing all weekend long. We actually were here in October testing, so we used it. We used the Azra Team Challenge as a good experience just to go out there, get the pit stops in, get this long race in. I've been training really hard. Actually, right there, my training coach from Southern Pride Performance has been helping me out, getting me dialed in. I've put on 10 pounds since October to now, just trying to get in perfect shape for this race. And even though I'm sweating because it's hot, I'm not tired at all. I'm ready to go out there and rip some more.
We love to hear it. Joe Lamondre Jr., it is hot out here. The sun is out. Track drying is underway. And Jamie is with Danny Oslick.
I've already had to take off the rain jacket down here, Hannah. The rain is completely stopped right now. Humidity definitely up, and good news, there is a slight breeze that is also moving into the speedway. Danny Oslick, though, let's talk about that run at the start of this race. The team said it doesn't matter where you qualify. You're always going to find something extra here at Daytona. How do you do it?
All these gray hairs. I've been here a long time, been coming to Daytona for a lot of years, and just really the crew is. I've struggled all weekend just with my own riding, and it's been a big weekend with, everything going on. So, just hats off to the TOBC crew, everybody working on these bikes, Olin suspension, Dunlop tires. If it wasn't for those guys, they make my job easy. I've been doing it a long time, so I jump on a motorcycle, I know how to ride it, and when they put a good one underneath me, it shows.
You've said it a couple of times coming into the race that this will be your final Daytona 200. After going out there, turning the laps, being able to get yourself to the front, can you still really sit here getting ready to go back out and say that this is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's once again, it's been a long time. My first 200 was in 2005, and it's 2025 now, so it's just, I'm just kind of over it. Michelle was a big part of this, and without having her, the fun's not there.
The emotions are high for this whole team this weekend. Again, Michelle Lindsay was the team owner here for TOBC and was able to enjoy 3 of your 4 victories with you. I know that this race is certainly dedicated to her memory after she courageously fought pancreatic cancer, unfortunately lost that battle last September. For you, when you put your helmet on, though, and being able to have all of those memories, how special is that?
Oh, it's amazing. It's stories we'll tell for the rest of our lives, so it's pretty cool.
It's great to have you back out here, even if it might potentially be the final one. It's great to have you. Hannah?
I'm here with Trevor Daly, a face you may have seen in the MotoAmerica paddock under various canopies, helping out various superbike racers, and a Canadian superbike champion in his own right, tackling the Daytona 200. Trevor, how have things unfolded for you in this first stint?
Yeah, it's been going pretty good, just trying to put in consistent laps, and I know the last stint's going to be the important one, so just trying to get there and have some good track position by the time we get there. So made it through the pits really, really good, had a clean stop, and yeah, obviously the rain started coming down, and I was starting to make a little bit of time here with that. Last year I had 2 superbike wins at home in Canada, both in the rain, so I love kind of the mixed conditions. It obviously throws a difference into a loop into the mix, and yeah, we're staying pretty consistent and feeling good.
Under the rules, you guys are allowed to refuel and work on the bike. What, if anything, are you making changes to?
Yeah, obviously we're going to top up fuel. Well, we can take advantage of that. So with 33 laps to go, we're waiting to see, if they're going to shorten the race or not. But definitely comes in, whether we go short or long, and trying to have fresh tires for the end, or pit early and get a bit of track position, then see if we can hold some guys off.
Is it fun for you to kind of take off the crew chief and mechanic and engineer hat and put back on the racer hat and put back on the leathers?
Yeah, it's definitely fun. It's amazing. Came down here last year for the first time doing the Daytona 200, and to kind of take not only what I learned last year riding, but also, like you mentioned, being in the MotoAmerica paddock all year with Sean Ditton and Kelly. Just amazing group of guys I was working with, and yeah, it's kind of cool on both sides of things to be a rider, but also be a mechanic and be a fabricator too, and kind of help the teams I've been working with in a bunch of different ways, and then take what I learned also with that, and learn working with a guy like Jeremy Toy and Sean, and even this weekend we've got a great group of guys. Some of the guys from Sean's crew last year helped me out this weekend, and yeah, just a lot of fun and awesome to kind of be on the opposite side of the wall.
Talk about the fabrication aspect of things a little bit here, because I know there's quite a few teams in the paddock that have some of your work under their canopy.
Yeah, it's really cool. The M4 team won the pit stop challenge yesterday, and they're using my quick change stands. So, and yeah, I think the majority of the Suzuki teams on the grid here are using those. So, that's really awesome. Some of the other teams in the bagger class and whatnot are using some pit equipment, and so yeah, it's definitely cool to come down and experience stuff, but learn, and then always be able to take that experience and try and better a product, and then to see some top teams and some top riders and guys using this stuff is definitely rewarding.
And then to be out there riding alongside them is just the cherry on top. Trevor, thank you so much. Let's get over to Jamie, guys.
Hannah, you mentioned it, that during these red flag conditions, work is allowed to be done on the motorcycles. And in the case of TOBC Racing and the 96 bike of Brandon Posh, it was a little bit of frantic work for several moments. Brandon, you've been watching on as these changes have been executed. What is it that you were looking for and needing?
Yeah, we just need to go a little bit faster. I kind of put myself in poor track placement back there, and I don't even know where I was, kind of la-la land. But yeah, if I could have got around the dudes in front of me and went with that group, it would have been pretty ideal. But yeah, just me having a brain fart, kind of. So better luck in this restart, and hopefully get into that front group and go away with those guys.
You stayed inside of the top 10, but to your point, further back than certainly what you would have liked. But you know it, it's a long race, and it comes down to the endurance and being there on lap 57 to ultimately be in a position to take that victory. For you as the rider, when you get back out there, how do you hit that reset button to mentally be ready?
I just need to get my elbows out, to be honest, get a little bit more aggressive and start playing the game. There's a lot of people that are kind of bumping and riding pretty aggressive, so it's time to give it back to them and, yeah, just make my way towards the front and stay there.
In order to stay there, and first you've got to get up there, and I've overheard a little bit of the conversation that it's getting a little dirty out there. The competition is pretty fierce there inside of the top 10. How do you challenge it?
You just got to be smart. This place is all, yeah, just it's like playing chess out there. So I got to dial in and get going for the restart and not make as many mistakes and watch my track position a little bit better and put myself where I need to be.
We talked to you earlier on in the weekend on the preview show getting ready for this weekend, and one of the things that you said was even just to get out here, you needed so much support. It cost a lot of money. You had to yourself dip into your savings account, put all of that pressure on your own shoulders to go out and be able to perform. Now that we're into the race, how rewarding is it to actually be on the grid?
Yeah, at first you're like, man, it's just great to be here, and then you qualify on the front row, and now you're like, well, it'd be nice to win this thing. So it definitely just keeps building a little bit of pressure throughout the weekend, but yeah, I've done it before, I can do it again, and I know I should be at the front. So it's just keeping myself in check and put myself in the right places.
All right, it's all about staying smart. That's Brandon Posh. We'll go back up to Hannah.
No stranger to a racetrack, but it's safe to say this one is quite of a different nature than Michael Dunlap is used to. It's his second Daytona 200. He debuted here in 2021 for the first time, and he is back to tackle the high banks. Michael, how has the weekend been so far?
Yeah, it's been good. We've had a struggle. We've got a mechanical a little bit within the bike, and we haven't the parts to fix it. So my electronics man's trying to. We're hanging on by a thread. I think the words we're using, but I felt good in the start there. I hung on. The mechanical we've got is just struggling for us to go out of the turns, but we sort of clung on, and coming out of the pits, I think me and another rider's come together and the chain has come off, so we got the chain back going again, we're back going again, but I think we're hanging on by a thread. Hopefully this part doesn't let us completely down. It's on its way down, but you know what, it's good. The weather's good, obviously. The rain is what it is. It'll be dried up in about 10 minutes, so it'll be good to go again.
With a background like yours, what is it that appealed to you about Daytona that you're back here and you're wanting to race here again?
Yeah, when I came the first time, we had a bit of a struggle, and I wanted to come back and have a proper go at it, and it just seemed to be a struggle again. But the bike's mint. I'm starting to really enjoy riding it, and the team's working well, and all the lads are enjoying it. And you know what, America's been great. Even just the people are lovely. So it's good to be somewhere different. Sometimes you're racing where I'm racing the same in and out every weekend, so it's nice to be somewhere else.
Was there anything that you were working on throughout the race or noticing on the motorcycle that you made changes to for the remainder of the race?
Yeah, there's not much. The part that's starting to feel is hindering us a lot on exit of turn, so we're trying to manage that, and I'm trying, obviously, I have to override it in areas to try and get it to give us a wee bit something back, but there's not much we can do. We could do with changing the part, but that's just the way it goes.
Now, do you happen to watch a lot of other motorcycle racing? Are you familiar with some of these other guys? Because I know you don't have quite so much experience racing alongside them. How do you prepare for a race like this and to be around riders you haven't necessarily gridded up against?
Yeah, don't really want, I'm not bothered. I'm one of the most aggressive people you'll ever get in track, so nobody really bothers me. If they want to push, I'll push with them. So, you know what I mean? And yes, look, the boys are fast. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? You come over here, they're fast guys at the front, and that's why when they're riding here all the time, they're quick. You know what I mean? But I don't seem to have any trouble. But hopefully people have realised what sort of character I am, and they know not to play elbows because they know it's not going to end too well. So it's I stayed out of trouble. So yeah, the boys have been good. It's hard because you're all slipstreaming each other, and you have to take the chance when you can get it.
Well, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun out there, to say the least. Michael, Dunlop, you guys here once again at Daytona. Let's get over to Jamie.
Carl Soltis came into the weekend with the goal of making the top 12, being able to go out there in that time attack. He did that. You were out there. Didn't go exactly the way that you wanted, but that was the first check mark of the weekend for you. We were just talking about that opening stint and a little mistake that you made. How do you clean up some of that as we go back to racing?
Well, I think this red flag really helped us. Having that start and getting to feel like the wind direction and know where my brake markers are, we'll dial it back a little bit so we don't run wide in turn 1 again, and we'll try and stick with the lead group. We were doing it there for I think 7 or 8 laps, so hopefully this time no more mistakes. We'll just dial the brake marker back a little bit and keep it smooth and stick with the lead group to the end, hopefully.
One of the other big parts of this race, obviously, are the 2 pit stops that have to be executed. Your team did that pretty beautifully for you when you came in. Knowing that there's going to be another one later, how encouraged are you by the entire effort that's behind you this weekend?
Oh, I'm really encouraged. We stayed up late last night practicing pit stops, and the crew has done a phenomenal job. They really got it dialed in, and it was great to see it happen in the race, especially because last year we had a brake pad fall out in one of our first stop. So knowing that the crew's there and they can get it done, now it's just up to me to get it done on the track. So I feel really encouraged by it, and I want to reward these guys for all their hard work with a good result.
You were able to see that front group right ahead of you until you fell back just a little bit. But what did you learn in that opening stint that you can now apply to the second half?
I learned where I need to brake when I'm in a big draft like that. You know, the draft makes such a difference on the brake markers and where you brake. So when you have like 5 or 6 bike draft, you got to dial the brake marker back a bit. So I learned, you know, where I need to be braking to make sure I don't run a little wide in some of the corners. So yeah, I feel good. I feel like I'm ready to go the distance, and I feel really thankful for this red flag. It gives me another opportunity to get out there and do well.
An incredible opportunity in front of you. Great to have you out here. Carl Soltis. It's not all just about the racers, though, that are racing in the 200. And one of them is standing by with Hannah.
I'm sure if given the opportunity, Sean Dillon Kelly would like to be racing in the 200. He's appeared twice in this race. His very first round in 2019. He was our youngest ever pole setter at just 16 years old. Sean, what does it mean to you to be back here and to be able to support some of the riders in this paddock with the experience that you have under you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would much rather prefer to be out there on track and giving the Rolex another crack at it. But at the same time, you know, I'm just grateful to be out here at my most local track, just a few-hour drive this morning. And, you know, first weekend back with Team Hammer after my comeback for this season. So it feels good to be saying hi to everybody again. And, yeah, the Florida weather's being a little bit crazy for the 200 right now, but trying to give my guys as much support as I can. Going to be fun being teammates with Richie this year, and I think they're giving a good crack between him and Tyler Scott. So, yeah, having fun, but definitely wish I was out there.
Take us through the mindset of the riders as they're sitting here in their leathers. It is hot, it is muggy. They just want to get things on the road, I'm sure. What are you thinking about when you're sitting on the wall like this during such a delay?
Yeah, definitely with how long of a race this is, having to be at a red flag, having to be in the pits, just waiting without truly knowing what time you go out. I know that's a certain feeling of you know, some anxiousness popping up and a little bit of annoying, but again, it is what it is. It's racing. You know, we're always ready for all these moments, at least in the mental side. So I know that these guys just want to be back out there, because once you're in that focused moment, you don't want to jump out of it and jump back into it. So it is what it is, but at least the weather's coming back out and it's drying out, so we should see him back out there soon.
You mentioned a bit of a full circle opportunity. You did race this race with M4, and you will be returning to the team this time for your second season on a Superbike. Tell us about that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, super excited. I'm going to be on the Superbike now with Suzuki, so it's going to be a big step after my first Superbike season last year. And obviously, Team Hammer, the whole Suzuki team, I mean, they're like family to me. You know, we won the Supersport Championship back in 2021, so to be able to come back with them and bring the crew that I'm bringing in, you know, coming back with Jeremy, with my crew chief, I'm super excited. And we already did a first test on the Suzuki Superbike, and I think we did a really good first jump on it. So I'm looking forward to it. I know exactly what I want to do. I want to have the Suzuki on the top, and we've got some work to do. So let's see what we can do this year.
Wishing you the best of luck this season. Thank you so much, Sean. Jamie, who you got?
Well, Hannah, we have been under red flag conditions now for just over 36 minutes, but we are now less than 10 minutes away, I'm being told, from pit lane opening and being able to get this Daytona 200 restarted. So that is great news for everybody down here on pit lane, all of the fans that are around this iconic facility waiting out this rainstorm with us. Shane Riggs, one of the riders, eager to get back out there, but it's been a little bit of a difficult weekend for you. You had to do an engine swap. The engine that's in it now, bone stock, you're down 15 horsepower. How is it racing?
We've definitely had a couple of downers over the weekend, but it's a blessed to have, you know, my family stand with me on the grid. The Wiseco Performance product R6 is like, she's a little bit down on horsepower, but overall, like, we just got to put our head down. And I've had to change my riding, adapt a little bit, but ultimately, hopefully, when we get out in about 8 or 9 minutes time, like, I can just start chipping away. You know, I know my endurance, my fitness is, and my stamina is going to be there, but overall I'm probably good 2 to 3 seconds slower than what I was running the last year, which is a bit disappointing, but at the end of the day, like, blessed to be here with my family, my team, God above me, you know, protecting me. No better event to be a part of, so yeah.
And when he says his family is with him, they've come all the way from Australia. It's not like they just drove down from Atlanta or anywhere close by. But Shane, you said it's a blessing to be out here. One of the other blessings you had was that you were able to work on that riding style. You had this engine in the second session of qualifying in the morning warm-up today as well. How much more comfortable are you now?
A little bit. We had an accident Q2 going through the chicane. We hit a couple of bumps. We analysed the data, and it wasn't really. I think it was just me trying to push that little bit harder on a downer horsepower, you know, motor. But overall, you know, we onwards and upwards from here.
Onwards and upwards. I like that positive attitude. Now being told that we are 5 minutes away from pit lane opening, and I know all of the riders, and that means it's time to get the adrenaline back up. It's time to stay refocused. How do you do that?
Throttle goes south. I've got to go faster. I've just got to pull my head in and just go faster, and credit to the team that's been doing what they do to get the bike together and on the grid. And you know, I couldn't pick of a better place in the world to be right now, you know, than with my family, with my team, and part of the Daytona 200.
All right, it's great to have you out here, and good luck when we get back to going. Now under 5 minutes remaining before pit lane is going to open, and we're going to get this race restarted. Let's get back down to Hannah.
There are a lot of different riders down here. You can see they took their leathers off to just kind of get comfortable, get cool, help themselves to the restroom if they need it, get hydrated. Tyler Scott, one of those riders behind me, took his leathers off just so he could be a little bit more comfortable. Wasn't sure how long this delay was going to be. You can see he's gotten dressed. He's got leathers on, boots on. I made a joke his cowboy boots are next to him. I said, how funny would it be if you ran Daytona with those boots on? He said, you know, I was thinking about it. I talked to him about the opening stint of that race, and he seems really comfortable, maybe a little bit frustrated with the way that things have kind of unfolded, but he said calm, collected, just focused and ready to get back out on the track. He is a man of few words sometimes, you know, he's always a great interview, but right now I think that he's just really locked in, trying to get prepared because there is still a lot of racing left. Let's send it back up to the booth to Steve and Roger.
There's plenty of racing still to go, and for Tyler Scott, just before that red flag came out, we did see him set the fastest lap of the race, Rog. So obviously for Tyler and also for Richie Escalante, they didn't want that race to stop. The rain came in at the worst possible time for them, but now they've all had that chance to regroup. Strategy's going to be interesting now for the end of this race. We've got we've got just over 40 laps to go in this one, 33 laps to go in this one to be able to bring us to the end of the race, and everyone now just gearing up for that, but they'll all know that it's about trying to pick that right time to make their pit stops.
Well, I think everybody knows now what Josh's plan is, you know, like what he's going to do. He's going to try to break the pack after a couple laps, so they're not going to want to let that happen. And now you see Tyler Scott so locked in. He's just replaying those first laps in his head, what he could do different, where he lost that gap to Josh Herrin and where he was trying to close it back. So you just kind of constantly replaying it in your head of what you can do different once we go back racing.
And for Scott, for Escalante, for Richie Cooper up there as well on the 147 machine, Brandon Pash, they had lost a little bit of ground, and especially for Pash and for Cooper, and suddenly they're right there with them. We saw in that opening stint how close they were to the front runners all the way through.
And they all talked about mistakes, and that's the thing now. You got to clean those mistakes up once we go racing, and they know now they were there the first couple laps, and they're going to go a little bit quicker. When the pace got lowered, they weren't able to run that pace, but now they get a good start, and everybody's going to know try not to let Josh Herrin lead through the infield. He's going to try to break the pack. So every time the draft going down into turn 1, I'm doing everything I can to make sure I'm leading out of there so he can't drop the hammer.
Yeah, get your flat track elbows out down in towards turn 1. But when you look at it as well, Rog, obviously enough for you, when you see a red flag delay like this, you're glad you're up in the booth rather than down on the bike at this stage. But the outlap here for this quick restart procedure, that's really important to be able to understand just where that track condition is at.
Yeah, and the paint as well can be slick after it rains, so getting on and off the banking is, and then the pit stops. Coming down pit lane with all the paint, even though it's dry, it'll still be a little bit slick in some spots. So, and the right hand of the side of the tire, we've talked about that so much this weekend. It's really hard to get some heat in on that right side of the tire, and you know that you're not allowed to change tires during a red flag here. So you get some riders heat cycles. Sometimes the tire doesn't heat cycle very good, and you go back out and you don't have the grip you had.
Obviously enough for pit road being used for the start of this race as well. That'll be the only time that the riders are on it. And then other than that, it's whenever you come into the pits to make your stop. And then when you're getting on the brake to get into your pit box as well, how brave are you going to be?
Yeah, you have to be a little bit careful. And I think, you know, you would have seen some crews probably trying to dry theirs out during this red flag. So just it's going to be interesting to see how this red flag plays out, because you know some riders made some adjustments to the bike to try to figure out where they can improve.
We saw Josh Herrin come down pit lane, try and stretch out his neck as well. So he's had a little bit of time to be able to take a break and get himself ready for action here when we resume for 33 laps here at the Daytona International Speedway and the 83rd running of the Daytona 200. You can see Josh now just getting onto his bike. The quick restart procedure means everyone will go from pit lane to the grid, and then we'll be back underway. We'll be over to Greg White and Jason Pridmore. Roger, we can see the riders here leaving pit road and the long exit of pit lane here, but that exit of pit lane always a little bit tricky, but particularly now that we've had that rain, because we're not going to have any bikes really running over that section of the track.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of riders just really trying to feel the track out after the rain, because you know they're going to try to get up to speed really quick, and you're going to see what these track conditions are like. The rain didn't come down super hard where it would wash a lot of the rubber off, but it could be definitely a little bit different than what they expected that first stint.
You can see the riders there just dragging their legs on the way and dragging their feet down in towards the right-hander as well. Just trying to understand that friction that they're able to get there.
You can see everybody's not taking many chances, especially on that right side. They're really just trying to fill out the track, see where the grip level is, but also getting that heat back into those tires, so whenever we go racing, they can get going. You see some guys dragging their feet, like trying to figure out the grip.
And we can see here for the riders on their siding lap back to the grid. The quick restart procedure is pit lanes open for 1 minute. Leave the pits, come back to the grid. You're met by one mechanic just to double check that everything's all right. And then we've got one more siding lap to the grid, the warm-up lap. And then we're back underway for what's now a 33-lap race here at the Daytona 200.
Yeah, now it comes down to one pit stop. Before it had to do 2 pit stops really well. Now you just got to make sure you get one more really good stop. But I think the biggest thing now is just don't lose that draft.
Yeah, 33 laps. We were able to see riders start their pits round about lap 18, 19, 20. So it'll be a case of whether or not you want to be able to run a little bit longer at the end of the race, or if you want to make your stop a little bit earlier. We can see everyone making their way through the chicane, onto the bank section and on towards their mechanics on the grid. We're just about to get back underway here for the Daytona 200.
Welcome back to the Daytona 200, Daytona Beach, Florida. Rain has rolled through, and right now it's holding off, and the crack staff here at Daytona International Speedway able to dry off the track as riders have gone on a sighting lap. Greg White, Jason Pridmore, Antelope, and Jamie Howe joining you for this coverage. Now, Jay, critical right now after this rain to do what?
Well, the big thing is just get a good analysis of what you feel like the track's going to be, and it looks like the infield for the most part. And I always like looking at the riders coming down because they're going to be gesturing or telling anybody from MotoAmerica if they feel like if there's a problem out there, they're going to let them know. It doesn't look like anybody's too riled up or anything. Some of the white lines on top of the bankings can be a little bit scary at this place too, Greg, if they get real wet. But it wasn't like we had a gigantic storm come through. We just had a pretty heavy downfall for, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. The track dried out pretty quickly. I'm looking out right now the windows. There's just a slight breeze, nothing too harsh. So these riders will all get back to their spot where they'll have a spotter, and they'll be ready to roll here, you know, in a couple minutes for their warm-up lap.
Updated weather, 74 degrees, track temp at 88, and at the current moment there's cloud cover as well over the track, as Josh Herrin in a good spot. He had worked so hard. Now basically what happens when a red flag comes out is, imagine that it is a snapshot in that moment of where everyone is on the racetrack. So the way it pans out, we have 33 laps remaining in this race. However, there's been only 8 riders that are on the lead lap. Josh Herrin, Ty Scott, Richie Escalante, Richard Cooper, Brandon Posh, Peter Hickman, Danny Eslick, and Matt Truelove are the riders that are on the lead lap. And then you have Harry Truelove, Lamandry, Gus Rodeo, and so on that are 1 lap down. So it's kind of a complicated situation, but if you really think about what happens in the red flag, it's that snapshot of moment in time that we have. And so timing and scoring will start to sort itself out after we get done with this warm-up lap and we get this second start going. Now keep in mind that whatever tire you had underneath you, Jay, when the red flag came out, you were not allowed to roll into pit lane and make a tire change.
That's right. Nope. Yeah, you're allowed to get in here. You're allowed to make some changes to the bikes, do things like that, but no tire changes, so that everybody's going to be on the same used rubber that they were on. So it means they basically had, what, probably 6, 7 laps on those tires, Greg? Maybe a little bit more, huh? We've got 33 to go. So yeah, they got about 5, 6, 7 laps on those tires, depending on what pit they came in, when did they came in. So, you know, but they're just going to, but the tires got, you know, right back onto warmers really quickly. There's not going to be too big of a difference.
Not too, like, you got it, Ty Scott has like 2 laps fresher tires than say
Correct.
Josh Herrin has.
Yeah.
Don't really see that as being much of a factor necessarily, because they will get the pit again and then, you know, take on new tires again.
Yeah, during our downtime, I heard our colleague Roger Hayden talking about not being able to let Josh have his way through the infield. Like, now that these riders have got some knowledge of what Josh is doing, there's nothing you can really do about it once it's been done until a red flag comes out. Now the red flag has come out. Now there is something you can do about that. You heard Brandon Posh talking about the aggressiveness of some of the riders and things like that. You want to be aggressive, but in these races, you have to show a level of controlled aggression where you still keep your mind about you, in the sense that anything you do to somebody that could be detrimental to creating gaps or space could ultimately win or lose you this race, or give you the opportunity to be on or not be on the podium. So there's a controlled aggression factor that you have to take into a race that we would kind of consider an endurance race, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's a solo endurance race.
Correct.
57 laps at the time we have, and the pit stops. Is a very unique race, this Daytona 200, done inside of a super speedway. And so the riders are coming in now, and the grid is clear, so they're going to be taking their grid spots, and we're going to get this race back underway. But of course there's that pit lane speed limit, so the question is, how slow are you going to go to get to your grid spot?
Yeah, and right now, if there was any big concerns, you would see riders letting people know. And so I think we're going to be good to go here in this this restart. So you want to get to the grid as quickly as you can, keep those heat in the tires.
33 laps to go in the Daytona 200, the 83rd running here in 2025. A look at the Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki rider, Ty Scott. This is an all-new grid from the original grid 24 laps ago. That's why you have Josh Herrin, who's on pole, Ty Scott, and Richie Escalante, as they were running 1, 2, and 3. The margin was just under a second back to Josh Herrin, and Richie Escalante had 2 seconds to Ty Scott. So now those two riders, if they're able to work together, well, Josh Herrin doesn't have that advantage anymore. Richard Cooper and Brandon Posh, 2-time winner back-to-back. Posh looking for another one. And Hickman, Eslick, and Matt Truelove, the only riders on this lead lap. So here we go, the restart of the Daytona 200. It's underway.
Good start from Ty Scott. looked like he got the clutch out pretty quick on that 70, but Herrin is able to get just as good of a start. It didn't look like he got as good as one, but here we go. So we have a rider down. It's a Kawasaki. Don't want to speculate, but there's a good chance. I know Jason Farrell is in our field.
Yeah, Austin Martinez also on a Kawasaki.
Correct, but Jason's is primarily green, and let's just hope that that's going to turn out okay. Back there, figure out who that is. But at the front, it's Herrin and the two M4 bikes. And then at looks like one of the TOBC bikes. Both Hickman and Cooper off to good starts. So, yeah, it's Jason Farrell that we're just kind of finding out is down in turn 1. So we'll keep heads up on that as the race continues to roll around right now as they get ready to go up onto the banking for the first time, Greg.
Yeah, Herrin's done the business already. Put a half a second between the rest of the field.
Right.
But here they go up onto the banking for the first time. See if those two Suzukis can work with each other. And Herrin ripping around towards the chicane for the first time. And this is what JP was talking about. You got to be thinking about that paint these first couple laps. After having some moisture on the racetrack, got to make sure that you keep it clean. And you can see Herrin taking a nice wide approach to the chicane.
Yeah, we're getting word that there's a red flag, so that's going to be for the Jason Farrell incident down there in turn 1. So it's so weird here, Greg, too, because when you're on the high banks, it's easy sometimes to miss a flag, and you can see a couple of riders. See how quick the accordion effect was? A couple of riders knew it was red flagged, a couple didn't. You have to have your bearings about at all times because of the speed around this place and the lack of visual, the lack of actual, at most racetracks you go to around the world, you'll see actual corner worker stations. And even though we have those here, they're not like built structures of stations that you'll see at some of the other places. So these riders on the way out of the chicane, a few of them had seen the red flag and a couple of the riders hadn't. So you run the risk of a collision there. So glad everybody kind of had their heads up there when they came through.
So after a lap, riders go in once again, and we'll have to see how this pans out. We think they're going to just basically redo the whole thing with 33 laps to go and restart at the grid that we just had. All right, so we'll step away for a moment from the Daytona 200 after our second red flag. We get this all sorted out and let you know what the plan is in a moment.
As we just heard from Greg White, we'll maintain our grid for this one. Red flag within the first 3 laps of the restart. We'll leave it with Josh Herrin on that pole position in front of Ty Scott and Richie Escalante. But Rog, very easy to have an instant like that into turn 1 here, particularly when we've just had that rain. It's a little bit slick, and that change from being up in the bank section down into turn 1, very easy just to run in a little bit harder and make a small mistake.
Yeah, you have the whole field kind of funneling down in one spot. Everybody's jockeying for position, so you can. It's easy to have that problem there on the first lap because everybody's trying to get a good start, be a little bit aggressive. This race is a little bit shorter, so guys are want to get going a little bit quicker.
Just for it as well, for our super sport riders here in the 200, that's obviously only the second time this week where they've actually had to roll from pit road down in towards that part of the track as well, because during a session they'll obviously take the pit exit road that loops all the way around to the horseshoe. And
one thing too to think about here at Daytona, because of the banking and the gearing so tall, all these starts are hard on the clutch. So we've seen some people run into those problems in some of these Daytona 200s where we've had a lot of red flags. But like you said, it's so different here starting not on the track, starting on pit lane. And, you kind of, it goes in and it goes left, and then you pick it up and you go straight again. So everybody kind of leans in together. And then when the person picks up, sometimes there's somebody beside you.
You can see here for Escalante's crew, obviously just thinking about whether or not to top up that fuel as well. We have 32 laps to go whenever we resume after losing that lap for the red flag as well. So for Escalante's crew, just trying to determine what they're going to do in terms of their strategy for this one.
Well, one thing, Richie Escalante, we talked about he was going to find the pace from the race. He surely has did that. He has struggled all weekend, and when it counts, he's going good.
we look into the pit box here, and Richie just talking to his crew down there as well. The number 54 will start from the outside and off front row of the grid, but long delay here for the riders, Rog. Obviously, we had that red flag after the rain, and now another red flag as well after that incident for Jason Farrell down at turn 1. But for the riders, it's always an interesting time for them. They've got to try and keep themselves calm, keep themselves in the game, because they don't really know when we're going to be able to resume either.
I think it's going to be a short red flag, so they'll get back pretty quick.
And we'll be able to see what Escalante is able to do from that front row of the grid once we get back underway. And you can see the number 54 in the pit box.
From an early age, we race. It's part of who we are. It's in our DNA. For some, the need to keep pushing fuels our lives. At VP Racing, we pour everything we have into creating the industry's best products for those who put it all on the line. Whether it's the track or the trail or wherever you race, they say you can't win them all, but you can sure as hell try. VP Racing, win every race.
Introducing Spectro Performance Oil's heavy-duty product line. Engineered not just for performance, but for endurance. Spectro offers leading engine, transmission, and brake fluid products, which are proudly made in the USA since 1966. Performance, reliability, quality, and tradition. Because every ride should feel as smooth as the first. Spectro Performance Oils.
It just kind of surpassed all my expectations as far as handling and actually rideability. It's really impressive.
This bike handles in the mountains like no other bike I've ever ridden.
Sport bike, American touring bike. It's a great hybrid of the two.
It sits down in the road when you hit that throttle and you just take off for the sunset. It drops into that flow and you're gone.
The American Motorcyclist Association sanctions MotoAmerica Professional Road Racing, the home of the AMA Superbike Championship. We also sanction more than 100 amateur road racing events across the country, offering member discounts on lodging and gear and AMA member-exclusive roadside assistance options for emergencies. The AMA also supports your right to race. Backing the RPM Act, join today at AmericanMotorcyclist.com or call 1-800-AMA-JOIN.
Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway for the 83rd running of the Daytona 200, where if you're just now joining us, we are under our second red flag of this iconic race. Unfortunately, this one being brought out for an incident down in turn 1 involving Jason Farrell. Safety crews needing to get out there and be able to safely get him off of the racetrack. So everybody down on pit lane right now, and what does that mean in terms of what the crews are able to do? Well, everybody has been able to do any work they want to do except change tires. That does include adding fuel to all of these bikes, and what that means when we get back to racing is they'll have about 18 laps worth of fuel on board, and what they will not have is any fresh rubber underneath them. And what we see in endurance racing is the good riders, they're able to go out and they're able to be fast. The great riders are able to go out, be fast, and save their tires. It's all going to come down to what these riders are able to do once we get back out to racing, but they're certainly going to be pushing all of the equipment to the limit here, as you see some of the crews down on pit lane still executing some of the changes. They have been able to have the opportunity to talk with the rider and to make these changes, which is not what we were expecting coming into the race today. So these bikes are going to be even more dialed in once we go racing. Steve?
And Raj, what we're getting as our update is we'll still maintain it as a 33-lap race despite that 1 lap before the red flag as well. So for the teams and riders down there, we saw quite a few of them hemming and hawing about whether or not to put in a bit more fuel.
Yeah, and everybody kind of has their strategy and the data and just trying to figure out how to, maximize that next pit stop to make it shorter to get out as soon as possible. And you can see all the mechanics, they're always going to, even if there's no work to do, they're gonna find something to do on these bikes just to keep them busy.
Yeah, everyone's being kept busy right now. But for the riders as well, you mentioned about the heat cycles for these tires as well. Can't change tires under red flag conditions here in MotoAmerica. So that's also meant that we've come in for the first red flag for the rain. Everything's gone back onto tire warmers. Everything then gets brought back out again for the quick restart. Go through a big heat cycle for that first lap, and then back into the pits to do the same again. That's always tricky as well to see how the bike and the tire is going to work for that. The tire guys for each team, really, they earn their money right now for how well they've managed things even back as far as Friday.
And now that the track has actually had a little bit longer to dry as well, I think we've seen some riders beginning that last restart really ginger on that right side, and we've had a little bit more. They have a really good feel for it now. They came through and they know exactly where the grip is. But you're right, it's another heat cycle, and that's really hard on tires when they get hot and they try to cool down. That's why you see the mechanics trying to get those tire warmers on as soon as possible, so the tires can't drop too far, and try to keep it equal.
Just here and there, there'll be 5 minutes until pit road opens again, and we'll have another quick restart to get underway. Hannah, you're down in pit road with Jake Zemke.
Winner of the Daytona 200, and you were on pole here in 2011. You've also won some superbike races here. Tell us what it takes here at Daytona on the high banks to pull off a victory.
Yeah, it's a tough race. It's very grueling, and the riders, they get put through a whole lot, but the real key to winning this race is your team. The pit stops is what's going to determine who's going to be in the mix come to the checkered flag that last run. So, you have to have a very strong team behind you that's practiced their pit stops, and that's really the key to this race.
I know you're familiar with a lot of the faces that are out there on the grid. Is there anything you're seeing out of anyone in particular or anyone that you're working with?
No, it's about what I expected. Josh has shown great speed through the infield all weekend long, and I figured at a certain point he would try to exploit that speed that he's shown. And as he said, there's a 1 second difference is not enough to break the draft or really to get away at this track. But if you can keep chipping away at it like that, sometimes you can just get a break, especially when you get into lap traffic. So it's kind of playing out the way I expected. I expected to see the Suzuki boys up there as well. And, hopefully we get through this little break and get the boys back out there and have a good race to the end.
Am I allowed to ask who you got?
I'm very neutral. I don't have any riders out there in this race today, so I just hope we have a good race all the way to the finish.
I agree. Let's get on over to Jamie. Thanks, Jake.
Another rider down here watching on, but not racing in the Daytona 200 this year, PJ Jacobsen, who we know will be one of the 3 riders returning to the Supersport Championship as part of that Rahal Ducati team for this year. Focus fully on that championship, but being out here and watching, how difficult is this?
Yeah, it's definitely pretty weird, like being here, and walking on the grid and stuff like that. But I'm out here, I have a lot of friends in the paddock and just showing my face here for MotoAmerica. So it's really good. I wish I was out there, obviously, but we're going to focus on Barber the first round in April, and looking forward to that with the whole Rahal Ducati Moto XPEL roll or die team.
You've been over here in the Ducati pit of Josh Herrin, watching on what they're able to do with the Supersport equipment here for the 200. Are you able to learn anything? Are there questions that you can ask, or is Daytona just such a different animal you can't really apply it?
No, not really. I'm just over here, supporting Josh, the team, a couple other riders on the grid and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's just good to be hanging out here and having friends in the paddock and just being here. And also, I guess it's kind of a nice thing just to not be racing sometimes too, and then focus on our first round coming up pretty soon.
During that first stint, we did get a full running time. What were your impressions of the pace here this year?
Yeah, the race seemed like it was going quite well, and the 3 of these guys were we're hammering down pretty good. So it kind of sucks that, with the rain and the red flag and stuff like that, it's been interrupting this Daytona 200. But I think going forward from the end of this, if it doesn't rain again, it should be some good racing.
It's going to be some great racing. You mentioned your full focus now getting ready for the Supersport Championship. Kicks off at Barber Motorsports Park. Have you guys done any testing? What stage are you in getting ready?
We've done some testing already, and we have some testing coming up here at the end of the month. So we have some things to try and be ready for Barber at the first round, and I'm hoping that hoping we can do very, very well, and leaving it off with a win last year, and trying to repeat that and bring that to Barber at the first round of the MotoAmerica series for the class would be awesome for the team.
All right, that's PJ Jacobsen looking to go for a title this season in Supersport.
Yeah, MotoAmerica Superbikes at Barber kicking off the season. April 6th, the weekend of for that opening round of the season. You can see now for the teams and riders, they all know that the quick restart is about to get underway, so time to get yourself ready to get down there onto your bike and back into this race, Rog, and you've got to get yourself fully ready and motivated.
Yeah, and it's really hard when you've been setting this long now to kind of get your mind right up to speed. You're already in a good rhythm. You thought you were going racing again. And then another red flag comes out. I think that's why you see so many riders just so focused. They don't want to lose that focus.
Experience makes a big difference, and we're just after seeing Danny Eslick down there as well on the number 69 machine, and four-time winner here. Plenty of experience at Daytona. Anything that can be thrown at you has happened to him over the course of his career here at Daytona. And a lengthy red flag, but when we get back underway, it'll be 33 laps of action for the Daytona 200 to see if Josh Herrin is able to make it 3 race victories in a row here at the 200. We'll pass over to Greg White and Jason Pridmore to call the action for the rest of the 200.
Riders making their way onto the road course again, and after that red flag situation, Jason Farrell had gone down in turn number 1, the 861 rider on the Get Fast performance. And good news, Jay, he's going to be up and okay.
Yeah, that's the main thing here. As you can see, it looked like him and another rider just made a little bit of contact. Jason got shot straight up in the air. And word that we got was he was given the thumbs up. There you go. He was letting everybody know he was okay as they got him strapped down. And he'll head over to the infield care center, which is great. And obviously, we've seen Jason win a national a couple years ago at Road America, and he's always a mainstay down here at Daytona. So just happy to see he's moving around okay.
Yeah, and that was a response to the fans here that were cheering for him when they saw he was okay. All right, so Daytona International Speedway, 3.51 mile road course here, the 12 turns. So riders out now on their sighting laps. They will come back to their grid position. This is the exact same grid position that we had just a lap ago. So it's Josh Herrin, Ty Scott, Richie Escalante. They're on the front row. Then we have Richard Cooper, Brandon Posh, and Peter Hickman on row number 2. Danny Eslick, Matt Truelove, and Harry Truelove, even though Harry is down a lap. Then we have Joe Lamandri, Gus Rodeo, and Carl Sotis. Narbonne, Dunlop, and Jason Farrell is going to be absent. So with the time that we have, there's going to be that open position on grid position number 15, JP.
Yeah, that's right. And they'll get back around here in a minute. And we just got to hope that this weather just holds out for us so we can get this race restarted, get everybody going again. These 33 laps, Greg, will go pretty quickly once we get the thing going again. And I'm really interested to see how this is going to play out again. These are just 2 more laps on these tires that they're going to have to deal with now. So even if they came in and they had 3 or 4 hard laps on them, they've done 2 sighting laps and a start of another race. And now they're going to get another sighting lap and another warm-up lap. So really, it's like putting 6-7 more laps on those tires.
Yeah, and Daytona alone is so punishing on equipment anyway. I mean, this is probably the largest dyno that MotoAmerica and, races these middleweight sport bikes on. But add to that now, you got a bunch of starts on these clutches. So hopefully
that is definitely another worry.
Right?
It really is. Yeah, because gearing here at Daytona, keep in mind, gearing here at Daytona is usually very, very, very tall. So because of how long you're on the banking and how wide open you are, you have to have a bike that's got fairly tall gearing. So getting the bikes off the line in that taller first gear can definitely be hard on the clutch.
And we talk about gearing, these bikes, that the transmissions are set. These are production-based motorcycles that are, balanced for racing that we have in this next generation. So the way that you would adjust the gears, the top speed is, you can see on the back of Josh Herrin's bike, is going to be your sprockets. So there's one that attaches to the motor and then one that's on the back. And so those sprockets are what we're talking about when we talk about gearing. So if you gear it tall, then first gear just becomes awfully tall as well. So riders forming here with one crew. It's a quick start procedure just to make sure they know where their grid position is, and then we're going to clear the grid, and then they're going to let them go on a warm-up lap and go. Now, one thing to keep in mind, yet again, is they are allowed to work on the motorcycles during the red flag. They are allowed to refuel those motorcycles as well, but they're not allowed to change tires. So the question now for us with 33 to go, with our normal like 17-ish lap window, is what's going to be the strategy here? Because Josh Herrin came in. If you look at Ty Scott, Jay, he's got what, maybe 2 less laps on the tires that he has. So when are the riders going to come in? Are they going to come in as late as possible so they have the freshest tire for the last sprint race part of it? It's going to be interesting to see now what happens.
That's why it's important to do long runs in the practices leading up to the race, so that you can see when the actual tire starts to fall off for you as an individual. As far as is it later in the stint? Because you're exactly right. The strategy now might be to break it into 2 like half sprints. So if they got 32, they're going to come in on lap 16 now. Or do we come in on maybe lap even 14 and make a new tire at the start of your next stint be a place where you can put in all the fast lap times?
Jamie Howe, do you have more information on what's going on and what people are thinking down there for pit strategies now?
Well, just talking to our front runners under these red flag conditions, I mean, you said it exactly right. Everybody was able to refuel. They have about 18 laps worth of fuel on board right now, but what they don't have, as you mentioned, is a fresh set of tires. So what do? Well, they've got to backtrack it at this point in the race, and they want to make sure they've got the freshest rubber on when they get to the checkered flag. That's when you ultimately win it. But as it was put to me, you know, the good riders, they're going to go out and they're going to be able to go fast. They're going to be able to get into those battles and keep themselves up front. But it's the great riders that are able to do that, as well as conserve the tires and get themselves into the position to make the pit stop when it makes the most sense and not when it's just comfortable for them aboard that motorcycle. So we're going to see here who has been doing the work to save that rubber and who's got the most to get them to the pit window that's in about 17 laps.
Yeah, and with that in mind, Jay, you have to think Josh Herrin has been shredding the infield road course. With the changes allowed this year and how quickly his crew was able to make that motorcycle more comfortable for him, we don't know with the times he's been able to set in the infield compared to everybody else if that's been abusing the tire or not.
100%. And the thing that Josh has done, though, is he's made it to where now everybody else knows how fast he is through the infield. They're going to be working just as hard. How tough is it for Josh to do those for that first split that he's been doing? Because that really, we talk about the banking, we talk about the run from the chicane to the tri-oval. Really, what Josh has been able to do is put more pressure on people in this infield section here at Daytona today. And you want to make sure, Greg, that you're not staying out because for too long of a period of time, because it does you no good to go out in the last 6-7 laps and have a tire that's still good to go at the end. If you can come in and head back out, so somebody like Josh Herrin, he might come in a little bit early to separate himself from the M4 bikes and be able to do his own thing.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out there because we know that the Triumphs are actually really good on fuel.
Correct.
So if you're looking at a guy like Richard Cooper, if he's able to stay out longer and not lose too much time, his fuel period that he's going to be in is going to be shorter than everyone else's. So keep an eye on the Triumphs. I mean, right now you have a Triumph in 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th.
Yeah, but he's got to routinely stay in the low 50s to 49s. If it gets above that, then he's losing too much time on the track. If he starts getting and running these tires to where they're doing 51s and 52s, he's going to be losing too much time to the leaders.
So we'll keep an eye on all that for you. As 33 laps to go as riders take their grid position as we're ready to get this race back underway again. And if you're just joining us after the second red flag, that was for Jason Farrell, who crashed, and he gave us the thumbs up as he was making his way into the ambulance. So we hope great things for Jason Farrell, and he'll be back to race action quickly. All right, so the green flags are waving for this start as we look at our front row. Herrin, Scott, and Escalante. Last start, it was Ty Scott just behind Herrin going through turn number 1. Can Herrin do it again? Revs are up. When the light goes off, we're racing again. Here we go. Into turn number 1 we go. The third shot at it, and it's going to be Josh Herrin up the inside, who's going to try to put the hammer down straight away.
Yeah, and again, he's going to do his, you know, we saw him work it on the last restart through this infield. He had about half a second, to your point earlier, Greg. And these two M4 bikes, they're going to try to do everything they can to stick as close to him as they can, because what they're ultimately going to try to do is lead him into turn one. They don't want him continuously leading them through the infield.
So Josh Herrin, this is round about the section where Josh starts to pull a couple of bike lengths before we get on to our first look at the banking per lap. So Herrin's doing it again, just really smooth.
They're staying a little closer to him this time, and you know, you can see there, like, look how much track Josh used compared to the bikes behind him on the exit of that turn. He really tried to let that bike roll out of there, but the M4 bikes are definitely close enough right now to where they should be able to draft back by him going down towards the chicane. I think Ty Scott has done a good enough job on his first lap through.
Up onto the banking with 32.5 laps remaining in the Daytona 200. Josh Herrin with a comfortable lead. You can see the two Triumphs just back off that draft. And it looks like it's going to be Posh who slides his way into second place for the moment.
It's interesting hearing Brandon talk just now down there on pits. Kind of said he made a couple mistakes early. I made mention that he slid back a little further than I would have felt comfortable. So he's going to make sure not to do that again. He's very good about just sticking his nose in there and keeping himself tidy. And Brandon now has worked himself into second. And you can see the draft and redraft. There's Hickman now. Look at this, Greg. We're going to be almost 5 wide as we come through the tri-oval on this first flying lap. But the guy that's leading the way through the infield is the guy they don't want leading. And now Hickman's going to take to that challenge to see if he can hold on to the number 2 through this infield.
So Hickman closes up on Josh Herrin. But Herrin has a clean racetrack in front of him, just like he likes it. But in talking to Richard Cooper, we talked about it. He said that Hickman, his teammate, was awfully fast through this section, and he closes right up on him. It's now when Herrin starts to get a good drive out, and it's this last bit of this sector number 1 where Herrin really puts some daylight between himself and his competitors. But look at Peter Hickman.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
he's definitely going with him, and that's going to be a big boost of confidence, not only for Peter Hickman, but for Ty Scott, who's just behind Hickman right now. He's seeing that Hickman's able to pull himself along as well, and both those guys in front of the number 70 should create a double bike draft when they get up onto the banking right now. So Herrin will have, let's see if that first split time comes up 57.1, and we saw them, I believe, in 55.9 was the quickest. So Herrin didn't rip through there the way we had seen it in the past, and Hickey now is in the draft of that Ducati as they come off the back straightaway banking and down towards the chicane. Here comes Peter Hickman.
Wow, what a slingshot move by Peter Hickman, but Josh Herrin is going to go late on the brakes and hold on to that position. But you can see that that's bunched everyone back up, because Peter Hickman, and he'll tell you, he's a pretty big rider. His teammate will tell you, I would love to draft off him in qualifying, because Hickey's very broad-shouldered and he punches a big hole in the air.
Of course, and you can see that those Triumphs are not hurting for speed, though, are they, Greg? He's able to get into the draft of Josh Herrin, pull up alongside, but look at this now. You're going to have 4 or 5 bikes again, all pulling out. And this is what these guys want to do. They are going to thwart the efforts of the number 2 on this particular lap, as Herrin will go into there in 4th, and it's going to be Richie Escalante and Cooper, Richard Cooper that is. The 2 Richies are 1 and 2 now, with Ty Scott, Herrin, Posh, and Hickey have gone back just a little bit. And then it's one of the True Love brothers, I believe that's Matt. They're just off there in 7th with Danny Eslick behind.
So this gets a little bit complicated, as we only really have 8 riders on that lead lap. So it's we'll keep an eye on that scoring pylon on the left part of your screen as well. But we know that right now the 54 of Richie Escalante leads the way, Jamie.
And for Richie Escalante, he just hasn't been comfortable all weekend aboard the Super Sport bike. And he kept saying, you know, it's bad habits that he had developed getting used to the Super Bike platform. But for him, having the opportunity to come in and having that red flag period, they were able to make some changes for the race pace here for Richie. And he, right before he put his helmet back on, he said, this is the best that I have felt all weekend. And when Richie feels good at Daytona, he's always right there in the fight, Greg.
Well, Jamie, it's funny you say that, because I ran into him before the start of this race too, and he gave me a little insight, and he said, Jason, I've just been struggling with just a little bit this weekend with the front of the bike. they kind of thought about maybe going back to what they ran last year in the last 2 years as far as making it. They had great notes. The team obviously very professional. So Richie, I think, kind of maybe went back to what he had ran the last couple of years just to try to get himself comfortable. So the fact that you talked to him and he said this is the best he has felt all weekend, those changes that team has made seem to have made him more comfortable.
And for Richie Escalante on the 54 and his teammate Ty Scott, they're not running identical setups either. Of course, with the Supersport rules changes allowing adjustable triple clamps, Escalante decided he was actually going to go with the stock triple clamps that come with the GSXR 750 off the showroom floor. As now rugged Josh Herrin down at the bottom, trying to take over the lead and grab a bunch of positions, but he'll slide into second place behind the 147 of Richard Cooper, who's taken over the point.
Yeah, we'll see now what Richard Cooper can do through the infield as Herrin has eased his way up to the back of the number 147 in that slingshot move that you saw from that Ducati rider as they came across the tri-oval. He was able to get down the inside of a group of riders that were above him and slot himself into that second spot. So now Coop takes the opportunity to lead the Daytona 200. And, you know, I think he's got a lot of confidence, Greg. That team has definitely come back with a vengeance this year. Better prepared, I feel. They went testing at Roebling Road before they even got to this place. So for Hickey and Richard Cooper, you're really seeing a team that learned a lot last year and now has taken that, even like you said earlier, that pit stop challenge. They learned something from that yesterday, and they got better overnight with their pit stops. So all in all, really good effort from that whole team.
You're 100% right, Jay. And something that Cooper mentioned and we talked about a little bit earlier is that he wanted to be especially patient in the first stint. And talking about his fuel stops and pit stops, he said there's great fuel consumption on the Triumph, especially because he is so lightweight compared to the stature of the other riders. He's going to play it by ear unless he feels he needs to come in. He's going to wait for his pit board, but the strategy for this second pit stop's a little bit different. He wants to put himself in a position to come back out of the pits. It'd be advantageous for him to come out when the Suzuki's come out. Because he said his bike operates in such a similar fashion to the Suzuki than that of the Ducati, it could be really advantageous to him for the third stint in the race.
Well, right now he's got 4 riders behind him that are going to gobble him up, and Josh Herrin is going to lead that charge. So when they come across the stripe, it's going to be Josh Herrin who technically leads that lap as they all pile into turn number 1 looking for room. It's going to be Herrin who takes the spot.
Okay, so let's just look at this. 57.6 last time through that first split. Let's see now. Tires are up to temperature. We've had it. We've got 2 or 3 laps under our belt since we restarted this race. Let's see if Josh goes back to doing what he does. Is he's in a little bit deep and a little bit hot there. That's going to allow Ty Scott. So Herrin was doing what we thought. He was going to try to push through the infield again and made a small mistake there in the International Horseshoe. Ran wide, allowed Ty Scott to go up underneath him, so he's going to have to wait to try that whole thing all over again.
So the Celtic Economy Lube and Tire Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati rider Josh Herrin now right in the middle of the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzukis as the number 70, Ty Scott, your pole sitter, original pole sitter I should say, is trying to put the hammer down himself and try to pull a gap. But right now things are so tight up front. Watch as they come on to the banking for the first time. You got Richard Cooper there in a great spot in 4th place to make up a lot of ground. We see passing here. Look at Cooper going down to the bottom. Look at him rocket by both riders looking for room. This is going to be tight to the wall. And Cooper gives Josh Herrin some room. Now it's going to be a braking duel into the chicane.
You know, Greg, when you get into a race like this and you have a big group like this, you get used to riding around. All these guys know who each other are. Every one of them have a lot of respect for each other as far as being on the bikes, out these kind of speeds, moving around. You're going to give each other room, and that was really good class there by both Cooper and Herrin as they were both fighting for the draft with Ty Scott. You could see both of them giving each other just a little bit of room there as Ty Scott now gets passed by Cooper on the banking. Look at Danny Essick on the back of that TOBC bike. He's up on the left-hand side of our screen right now. He had a 5-6 rider draft, and that's what's going to catapult him all the way up to possibly 4th as they get down here into turn 1. Now he's going to be back there a little bit further, but now this is where everybody gets the bike slowed down. You pick your way through that infield again, and it starts all over again when you hit the bank. But Herrin back to the front into the infield.
Yeah, that was just savvy play by Josh Herrin on that front straightaway banking. The way he used the draft and pass, there was no panic when Cooper went down to the bottom. Herrin knew exactly what he was doing. That's all that experience that he's had here in this race.
But look what happens. Look, see this right here? Now Escalante is doing everything he can to go with it. Before we had our very first red flag, remember Escalante had gone very, very fast on the lap, like 2 laps prior, and he had been able to stick with Herrin through that first split. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at here. I expect this split, again, to go right down into the low 57s. We're going to get that flash up onto our screen right this second, Greg, and there you go, 56.6. So he is a half second quicker than Escalante just in that first split. They were in the 57.7 range as far as that split goes. Drops right down into the 6s now. Now everybody's going to get a little bit more jumping, a little bit more concerned. They do not want the number 2 to have clean air.
Off the back straightaway into the chicane, that was the legendary Geraldo Faraci looking on, of course, involved with the Celtic, Econolube and Tire Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati team after he guided that group to a championship last year with Josh Herrin in the MotoAmerica Superbike class. But here, the Super Sport Next Generation rules, Daytona 200. These middleweight sport bikes getting after it. These teammates drafted in passing. And there's your 3 up front. Josh Herrin trying to make a break from the rest of these riders. Wasn't able to do it. Oh, and Ty Scott trying to find some room on his teammate. It's going to be Escalante, and Scott again getting roughed up. Got to pick it up for a second. Josh Herrin clearly having position on the inside.
But that's the franticness you see if people think that they've got to get in front of a certain rider. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to notice. Now, that lap there, Herrin was much better into the International Horseshoe. Escalante and Ty Scott seem to be able to get their Suzukis tipped into the International Horseshoe under trail braking and hold a little bit tighter line than that of the Ducati. Now look at Escalante putting his head down in this first split, trying to do the same thing that we've seen the number 2 do, and it's brought everybody back together again. But that splintering is kind of starting right now. With each lap that passes, it will be harder and harder to hold on to these guys that are trying to rip through the infield.
Richie Escalante came off injury last year, Jason, and when I talked to Escalante about his winter, he said, you know, I came off of injury. I raced a couple of Superbike races at the end of the season, so I took actually a month off from training. So it wasn't until November he got back into it, and he dropped 4 pounds to race here at the Daytona 200, and he's going to gain it back before the Superbike season starts. Guy is committed to racing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Richard Cooper finds himself back into 3rd, and you can see there wasn't a lot gained on Richie Escalante down that back straightaway. He got a good drive, albeit he was had that bike sliding pretty hard out of turn 6 and bucking up underneath him. So for Richie Escalante, he's going to have some confidence knowing that nobody went by him down that front straightaway. Now Ty Scott in the draft of Richard Cooper. They're going to go side by side and try to fight for the draft of Josh Herrin up the road in front of him. And here comes Brandon Posh on the 96 TOBC trying to go around the outside of both. Herrin will lead us down into turn 1 on this lap.
So Herrin with another opportunity to try to splinter this field with his infield times. Hasn't quite had the speed he had before the red flag came out. And of course, we're going to be keeping an eye on that pit window as it opens up for these riders with 33 to go after this restart and tires that had some laps on them. Each of these riders having different amount of laps on them. But again, this group right here that we're seeing, it's not necessarily everyone in this group has the possibility of winning the Daytona 200, because the riders that are in this group, like Michael Dunlop,
Michael Dunlop's like 6 back, isn't he?
Yeah,
right
he's
now?
6 back, but he's a lap down.
Yeah, so is Harry Truelove. Matt's on the lead lap though. Matt on the 123 is on the lead lap. So look at this. Here we go again. 56. It's 57 flat for Escalante. 56.6 for Herrin. So
Herrin got some wheel spin coming up onto the banking, as did Escalante, but it looked like Escalante had less because Richie Escalante, the 54, getting a good draft and slingshot into the lead, into the chicane. And a good move to get in front of Josh Herrin, not allowing him to get the angle into the chicane. So Escalante will lead us onto the banking.
Ty Scott did a good job sliding up underneath Richard Cooper, also going into that chicane. So now it's going to be a big draft and redraft again. And you can see Brandon Posh this time a little bit more aggressive than what we saw in the opening stints of this race. He's back there in 5th spot, has not lost touch with these guys, and you can see him there on the white TOBC Triumph just off the back of the front four. As they come across the tri-oval, he should be able to close that gap back down. He's got Hickman right behind him, and then as you said, Greg, Dunlop is just off the back of these 5 now.
It was one of the things that Brandon Posh had to say during that red flag period, was that during that opening stint, he just wasn't aggressive enough. What he needed to do here when he got the opportunity to get back into this lead battle is just put his elbows out and do exactly what you said, Jason. It was going to come down to being aggressive. That's what the rest of the field was doing. That's what this race is going to demand. And if he's going to go for a 3rd Rolex here this year, he's going to have to do the same thing.
And Jamie, just on the heels of Brandon Posh, Peter Hickman trying to stay in contact with that lead group. Something that differs for Peter Hickman from the rest of this front 6 here is that he's actually the one that's facilitating everything for his team. So the rest of these riders have the opportunity to have everything kind of planned and done and gotten here for them. But Peter has had to take this international and ship the bikes here and facilitate everything from across the pond and get everyone here, get all the crew here, get the riders here and plan everything, and then still get on the motorcycle and qualify. And not only that, but provide an opportunity for his teammate Richard Cooper, who has mentioned he could not be here without Peter and his generosity and just the team all coming together and working together so hard.
And that's a great story, Hannah, because this race has had an international flavor to it for so many years. And you remember when so many riders from the World Championships all over the world back in the day used to show up at the Daytona 200. And it's nice to see, you know, when MotoAmerica took this back over 4 or 5 years ago, Greg, we started getting that international flavor coming back into the paddock. And I think that we're going to see both Richard Cooper and Peter Hickman, or at least their team, you know, hopefully over here for years to come.
Continuing to change spots up front, but coming across the line, going around the outside is Escalante. And oh man, that looked for a moment that he might close down on Herrin. But Herrin, he doesn't want to give up this position. He wants to race out front through this infield and make it difficult for people as hard as it possibly can to reel him in on the banking. There's something right now, Jason, that just looks special about Josh Herrin, that basically is from the tri-oval into turn number 1. Like, he's got either the draft dialed in or his bike is like perfectly geared.
You know, it's interesting because you say that, and it definitely looked like, you know, he gets a little bit tighter down into turn 1 than most. He's comfortable down on the bottom of the banking. You know, it's interesting to me that he's having to look over his shoulder just about every lap out of the International Horseshoe. And it might be a way for him to think of who he might be a little bit better than as far as getting through the infield. And that might make a difference on how hard he pushes through there. Escalante has shown that he can take the measure of Herrin there. But now that advantage, I think, by what he did in the first split, the crews of the other teams have come in and said, this is what's happening right now. This is what we're noticing. This is what we're seeing. We've got to do more to try to get you more comfortable through the infield, whatever that is, because we've got to get you to be able to run with the number 2. And now you're starting to see it's not as easy for Josh to get away. Now, does that play into now, Greg, the pit stop strategies? Does he want to come in a little bit earlier, meaning Josh Herrin, and get new tires on to try to gain that advantage of being able to go as fast as he feels he can get through the infield? How much is he being held back? And that'll be the strategy for a lot of the other riders that are behind him to think about too, how their tires are feeling. When you start to feel a big drop off and that group starts to get away from you, I think you're better off pitting and getting new tires and trying to stay out there for longer. As we go 5 wide, whoa! Brandon Posh at the top as they come across the tri-oval.
Pretty incredible as we have lap traffic up ahead.
It looks like one of the Triumphs went really wide there, and it looks like it's Cooper. I believe it's Cooper. Does he have a problem? He does. Richard Cooper has a problem on the exit of turn 1. I'm not sure. I thought I heard something in my headset. But yeah, he's still under power. I was wondering if like a chain had snapped or something like that.
Yeah, that's what
Greg,
I was looking at too. Yeah, the possibility of that. There's also some reports that maybe there was a puff of smoke. It looks like the chain's good.
Yeah, he's literally
pulling
gonna
off
park
now.
it.
Yep.
He's parking it over in the International Horseshoe, so that's heartbreak for him 2 years in a row.
Look at that. Looks like maybe some steam coming off of maybe the radiator or some smoke pouring out of that bike. So for Richard Cooper, unfortunately, one of our front runners is out. You can see him at the top part of your screen right there going wide, looking down, trying to get the thing slowed. Keeps looking at the dashboard, and that's when he knew something was going wrong.
Something's not right there, but no fluids. Doesn't look like we're going onto the track at all, and you can see it's discontent there And these guys, I could see that they were going to possibly come up onto a little bit of traffic as our leaders are coming back down into the chicane right now.
And look what's happened.
Look at what's happened. It's Josh Herrin at a, it wasn't 56.8, but Escalante went 58.6. So I'm not sure what happened to Richie that time through the infield, but something happened when we were paying attention to what happened to Cooper. And this field is getting split up again. And Brandon Posh is now the guy that's going to be trying to chase Josh Herrin down as they come down towards the tri-oval.
JP, I just want to expand on something you were kind of speculating on a little bit earlier, that Josh looked so comfortable through certain sections. They must have really gotten that gearing dialed. Some different rules this year. They are running 250 less RPMs this year, so it made it a challenge to find the gearing for this race weekend, but they were able to get that dialed. They're also allowed to make more chassis changes, so link, offset, forks, and the bike is feeling a lot closer to the Ducati Superbike that Josh is used to running. It's a completely different bike from last year. They work for more stability, especially under braking, and that's also what's helping him go faster, specifically through the infield, as you've mentioned how quick he is through there. He's 0.8 of a second quicker through the infield this year than last year.
Yeah, you know, Hannah, it's funny because when you get with a good team, they figure out a way to put things together and work. And there's so much data now on these Ducatis, and we know that they've been being raced over in World Supersport, and they've had a lot of success here in America, as you know, and this guy's won a championship on one of these bikes as well. But it just looks like as the tire wear goes down, as it seems like it gets a little greasy almost, Greg, it just seems like he's able to do what he's doing now, and he's pulled that gap again, hasn't he? 56.2 to a 56.7 for Posh. 56.5 for Ty Scott back there, but Greg, he put half a second on the 96, and now Ty Scott kind of finds himself in the spot that he did before the red flag, where he's going to have to try to chase Herrin down himself again.
21.5 laps remain in the Daytona 200. We'll step away, but don't go anywhere because this race is going to have some pit stops coming up.
Just coming up to 21 laps to go here at the Daytona 200, and Rog, we're closing up on that pit window in the next lap or two for these riders. At the front of the field, Josh Herrin has tried to pull that pin, but Ty Scott giving it everything he has to try and close back up.
Yeah, Tyler Scott just did a great job that lap, able to do a, even Brandon Posh that lap, really good lap time. But Tyler Scott, the only rider since the red flag to be able to get back into the 48s, a 48.6. And you can see what that lap time has did. He closed that gap down to Josh Herrin. Almost looks like the same as the restart. We had a big pack the first 5 laps, and then Josh got to the front and really put his head down.
Yeah, Josh just trying to apply that pressure all the time. Anytime he hits the front, he wants to try and break up that group. He's done that insofar as he's got Scott and Pash going with him. Richie Escalante, though, he has to dig in now for these last couple of laps before his pit stop. Peter Hickman up there inside the top 5 as well right now. And Hickey just keeping on the back of Richie Escalante as it is right now, but we're coming up towards that pit window. We saw at the first round of pit stops, Josh Herrin and Ty Scott very closely matched whenever they came out of the pits. Really important to have that clean run through the pit stops, and they should be coming in the next few laps.
This pit stop too is going to have more pressure than the previous one because it's the last one. You cannot make a mistake now because you're running out opportunities to overcome it. So there's a lot of pressure on these crews and also these riders. They can't make a mistake getting on or off pit lane.
Yeah, smooth is fast in the pits, so when we see those pit stops, just keep an eye on the mechanics making those wheel changes and then being able to get that fuel in. We saw for Brendan Pash that it was a bit of a slow stop on his first round on pit road. He'll need to be a lot faster this time around, but he's right there in this battle for the top 3 here at the Daytona 200. We've got 20 laps to go as they come across the stripe, and we'll throw back to Greg and JP.
Tyler Scott closing the gap on Josh Herrin.
I'm so impressed with him on that lap, Greg. That's a great lap from Ty Scott, 49.1. Brandon Posh has dropped the last 2 laps. He's gone the fastest he's gone in the whole race the last 2 laps. Those guys got close down in turn 1. Now you've got traffic. Will that be a big enough mistake? Ty Scott ran Josh Herrin down on his own this last time by, as now they have gotten into traffic, and there you go. That's what breaks this race up right now. So, as you see, Herrin's got to jump. Both Scott and somebody just runs off the racetrack, but Scott and Brandon Posh fall back just a little bit. through the International Horseshoe as they came up on some slower traffic.
And I understand the lunge that Tyler Scott made.
Yeah.
Because it was like right at that moment where that lap traffic was going to turn in. Let's take a look, Jay, at
so
this
you're gonna
replay.
see Herrin's up underneath. Brandon Scott knows that. You can see downshift gets done for Scott, gets the bike tipped in, but he's just running a little bit wide. And that's where, as a rider, you have a feel of what you feel you're teetering on as far as the edge goes. And he just felt like it was better to keep the bike upright a little bit longer rather than try to turn the thing in and run the risk of losing the front. Ty Scott now has to put his head back down and redo what he did just now as far as getting that 1 second gap back to Herrin. So he's already proven that he can do it once. Let's see if the 70 can do it again.
And Jay, we know that one of the riders on the lead lap, Matt Trulove and Danny Eslick, in the pits. So Trulove already opened into the pit lane. So that leaves these riders out front as we had Richard Cooper.
Ty Scott coming down the bank right now. I don't know if that's an indication that he might come in. Look for that right leg sticking out. If it is at all, it's not. So he is going to go around again as you see Herrin up just in front of him. But you're right, we're in that window now, aren't we, Greg, of guys coming into the pits. But Ty Scott's done a nice job again of closing that gap down. So that's got to give both Ty and his team a lot of encouragement. Look at Brandon Posh doing everything he can to keep that TOBC triumph in tow with these two in front of him, as Escalante and Hickman have now dropped back a little bit. And there you go. That guy did a great job getting out of the way. Here's another one of the Trulove brothers coming down pit lane to get into their pit stall. I believe that's Harry Trulove doing that.
Yeah, Matt's already in and out. Trulove, the 123. And Matt's the one who was on the lead lap when this race restarted. There were only 8 riders on the lead lap, one of which, Richard Cooper, went out of this race just a couple laps ago. So Herrin continues to lead now with about a half a second over Ty Scott and Brandon Posh. We're getting word that there's some sprinkles coming down. So hopefully that doesn't affect this race continuing on, as it has about 18 and a half laps to go in the Daytona 200, the 2025 edition. Herrin up high on the banking, now with a nice big comfortable gap, but at any time we could see him come in. And Josh Herrin is dangerous when he gets a fresh set of rubber underneath him. And if his team has a good pit stop, they're pushing it as far as they can, because, Jay, the problem we have is there's still 19 laps to go.
Yep.
So Herrin wants to go at least 1 or 2,
correct,
maybe even 3 more laps if he can.
It's the first time I've seen Herrin's bike back into the chicane just a little bit. And Ty Scott's bike looked very, very on form as he entered the chicane there. And Herrin wasn't late tipping in, but the fact that the bike was backing in ever so slightly on him, you can see probably slowed some of his mid-corner speed through the chicane. Ty Scott's going to lead him across the line, so Josh Herrin knows that he's going to have a guy that's not going to give up. He did not see Brandon Posh back there, which probably means, Greg, that he is in pits. So I'm looking out my window. Posh is indeed down pit lane. So these two guys now, as they run off out into the infield together, there's nobody around them, but Herrin knows he's got a fight on his hands with that number 70. Escalante
Richie Escalante now coming down pit lane and approaching the team for what will be the final planned pit stop of this Daytona 200. You can see the crew at the ready. They've been practicing this over and over. They had a really great pit stop that first time around. Richie off of the bike getting a drink of water. 5 crew members allowed to work on the bike, one of them being the fueler. A 6th crew member allowed over the wall as well. His sole role is just to hold that fire extinguisher. And it was another very clean pit stop for Richie Escalante here in this second half of the race, turning much more competitive lap times.
We'll see if that pays dividends as these two out front, Ty Scott and Josh Herrin, continue to mix it up. Who's going to be the first one to dive into the pits for Josh Herrin? I know he wants to let it go as long as he can to have as fresh rubber as he possibly can towards the end of the race.
And this is just where you hope, Greg, that your team got all the gas in the tank that they could get in there. As you see, Josh Herrin is going to race Ty Scott really, really hard. So that right there is Herrin going up underneath Ty Scott. Ty Scott having to take to some of the extra runoff that we have here. Herrin is racing him extremely hard. You saw when they went down into the West End Horseshoe, Herrin was almost thinking about going around the outside of Ty Scott. And now traffic on the bankings. Ty Scott's going to get in the draft, and he's going to draft right back past number 2, Josh Herrin. So Herrin's going to have to try to figure out where he wants to try to go by Ty Scott. See if he does this tight line again as they go down into turn 1. And they've got a back marker in front, so that might thwart the efforts of Herrin as they were running up on the 18 here.
Oh, and down goes that rider, and Herrin has a box. So
wow, that is really lucky that those guys didn't go down there. I took my attention away for a minute, Greg, so you saw that better than I did.
Yeah, I'd have to see a replay of that to see if there was any contact. It didn't look like it.
No.
It just looked like one of those incidents. And Josh Herrin kind of tapping on his helmet there. That might be an indication that it's sprinkling a bit.
No, that might be the indication that he's going to come into the pits.
That's right, because of where the crew was. Yep.
Yeah, he's probably telling his guys, hey, I see it. And you'll see, that's why Josh is racing as hard as he can right now. This is an in-lap for him probably. And we'll have a look here. Look on the right side of the left side of the screen, trying to figure out what happened. Just lost the front. But look at Herrin. See what he's doing? He's trying to just disrupt Ty Scott's pace. He wants to be leading coming into the pits. Does Herrin, just in case Ty Scott's coming in at the same time. Herrin wants to be leading into the pits. So Ty Scott is going to get in the draft as they go down the back straightaway. Let's see if he takes another shot at going past the Ducati. And then I think Ty is going to have to run a pretty defensive line into the chicane. I don't think he's going to do anything with Herrin this time. So he's going to sit behind the number 2. And then we're going to get a run through this chicane. And then about probably half to 3/4 of the way around the banking, we probably won't be able to catch it from our camera angle, but Herrin will at least have his right foot off, letting Ty Scott know, hey, I'm coming in. So he's gone to the top of the banking now.
See if he drops down.
Let's see if he starts to drop down the banking.
Here he comes.
And there you go. See that right foot, Greg, how it was just hanging off the side? They're both coming in. So he had that right foot hanging off to let Ty Scott know, and now they're both coming into the bank. Coming in here together.
Whoa. Ty was close. They're side by side. This is going to be all on the teams. Hannah, what are you seeing?
Well, the team was watching the screen to see the replay of what potentially happened with Josh Herrin, and the other rider was a near miss, but they also recognized as soon as he tapped his helmet, they all shook their head yes, sprung into action. They are ready and waiting for him to come down the pit lane here. It looks like him and Ty Scott might be having some words alongside each other. I'm not sure how well they can hear each other over the roar of the engine, but you know, talking to the team earlier, they said it's not necessarily the speed with which they complete this pit stop, it's the efficiency and the way that their movements are very deliberate. As you can see, both tires changed really quickly. We're refueling right now. Really, that's the only holdup, is just waiting.
Wow.
And he's back on the bike and trying to get out. It looks like the front stand is jammed.
Wow, so they left at the exact same time, but it was that little bit of error that happened for his team. So now Herrin is going to try to put that lap in that he needs. He's going to have to dig really deep.
Greg, hats off to the M4 X-Star Suzuki team, the Vision Wheel team. They have struggled with pit stops. We've talked about it over the last 3 or 4 years. Today, they have not. That team has done exactly what they need to do. You heard Jamie earlier say that Chris Orch said yesterday they've done probably 1,000 pit stops working on it, and they've done everything they can do to get their rider out front now. Now it's going to be up to Ty Scott to lay down these early laps and try to do as good as he can on new tires. Look how much Herrin pulls up on him. Yeah. This is experience, ladies and gentlemen. This is just the experience of the Daytona 200 and getting out. Like, so right here, they couldn't get that front jack out, could they, Greg? So it was a little bit late. Now it's stuck again. He probably lost maybe 2 or 3 seconds, but as they come up on the banking, look who's right there. Josh Herrin is already on the back of Ty Scott.
He dug into the toolbox, man,
really
and
did.
just really uncorked an outlap here that's really incredible. Josh Herrin is fired up, but as this race sorts itself out, it looks like Ty Scott and Josh Herrin getting after. Herrin just got out of the saddle and had a look.
Just had a look down at that front wheel. Just, you know, sometimes if you feel something, or you know, even when he was leaving the pits, he knew he was hitting that front stand, maybe just checking to see if there was any damage or anything wrong.
Yeah, not sure if he maybe the rotor.
Yeah.
You know, when you get on those brakes, all of a sudden you're going, wait a second. Hopefully everything's okay on board.
What does this do for Ty Scott's mental? Because he knew that he had got out of the pits and his team did a great job. He knew that he saw Josh Herrin having some issues, but Herrin's already ran him down. They're looking at each other as they come down through that tri-oval. Herrin is going to lead them into the infield for their first time on brand new tires with 15 laps to go, Greg. And they have broke away. Richie Escalante holding down third right now. Hickey is in fourth. Brandon Posh, who when we started this cycle at pit stops was running third, is now back to fifth.
for Tyler Scott, one of the things that he said during that red flag was what he learned in being out there with Josh Herrin was that they were going to have to continue to push the pace of this race because Josh seemingly had it aboard that Ducati, and he said, I feel very confident with what I have on this Suzuki for himself, and he said, I can definitely do the number that Josh can do, and just looking at the lap charts and the way that this race has progressed, the only place where Josh has anything out there in terms of pace over Tyler Scott is in that infield section, and now that the crew has done all of the work for him, Brandon, or when Tyler left pit lane, you could see just the body language, the energy that he took back out there to the racetrack.
You could also see there, Jamie, as they went into turn 6 on that lap, Ty Scott was a little bit tighter, and you could see the front end of that bike fighting for traction, hopping up and down. He was able to get that bike in there, get it turned, and Ty Scott now in the draft as they go down the back straight.
Jay, we're getting word that the number 70, Ty Scott, is now being penalized 1.72 seconds for that cut that he had in the chicane. He didn't roll off enough. So it was this incident on the left part of your screen. So Tyler Scott has been given a 1.72 second penalty, as is Brandon Posh. He's assessed a 1.74 second penalty for an incident that he had the 96 earlier.
You know, Greg, it's a harsh penalty because, in my view, Herrin stepped it up underneath Ty Scott there, and that's a racing incident. You want these riders to be able to race. I don't think if you asked either one of these two guys at the front if there was really any advantage gained there in that particular case. So that's a really, really unfortunate penalty because now Ty Scott is going to have to pull that time out in front of Herrin, and I think that's going to be a tough order right now.
So Josh Herrin out front, Ty Scott trying to chase him down. And for what we got from race direction, that means that in order for Ty Scott to win this race,
how about this guy?
He's going to have to win by 1.73 seconds on the racetrack over Josh Herrin.
But let's not forget about Escalante back there. He just ran 49.1. He was almost a full second quicker than the guys in front of him. So Escalante is on a charge. So as much as it's unfortunate for Ty Scott, and I don't like the penalty, Greg. I know that when you start to look at things like that, you want guys racing hard. To be able to have that runoff, I like the fact that they have that runoff, and Ty was able to use that. But Escalante now has really been charging forward and he's going to get in the draft of his teammate, and hopefully that will allow him to springboard himself forward to get up to that number 2 as well.
So let's see what Richie Escalante has at the moment, as he is on real time on the racetrack versus Tyler Scott. So Herrin now with a comfortable lead in terms of he can do what he wants to do. He's so good at pushing his own air and drafting. So whatever you throw at Herrin, history beckons the number 2. And it seems like he has had just a weekend that has been dialed in, as now Escalante gets to the back of his teammate. We'll see if this draft and pass maneuvers can start to close the gap that Herrin has opened up. 175 miles an hour. Some draft and pass maneuvers are touching on 180 miles an hour on the high banks of Daytona for these super sport machines. Incredibly fast for two-wheeled machines.
48.8 that last time by for Escalante. He's the first guy since we've seen the tire change get back down into that 48s. So for Richie Escalante, he was struggling and suffering a little bit on those older tires before that last pit stop. But now he's starting to show some real pace, Greg. And it looks like we're going to get right back to where we were in 2023 when the number 2 and the number 54 went at it, and they were glued together. Herrin right now has got the hammer down trying to get away from these guys.
Yeah, that Celtic Economy Lube and Tire Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati V2 is getting after it. Looks like we got some brothers racing it up possibly. The True Love brothers, Matt and Harry, getting after it, although Matt is a lap ahead of his brother because of the red flag and taking that momentary snapshot picture. But I don't care if you're on the racetrack, you want to beat your brother no matter what. That's the right part of your screen. Back up to the lead battle between Herrin, Escalante, and Ty Scott.
How about a 55.9 for Herrin through the first split? Fastest first split we've seen. He is on the charge. Look at how those M4 bikes can hold a little tighter line through the middle of that chicane and cut that distance. So Escalante right now is going to feel the draft come into play. He's just far enough back, Greg, where he'll start to feel the slipstream, and he'll be up alongside Herrin by the time they get down to this tri-oval. You'll see him getting his tuck, and he's following right in the wheel tracks of the number 2. And here you go as they come across tri-oval. Escalante will probably get credit for leading this lap, and it is a 48.5 for Escalante as well.
That's on the back of Josh Herrin, go 55.992 in the infield sector, the fastest split time of sector 1 in the race. And this is the section that we're talking about where Herrin did it a lap ago. So Escalante has some work to do. However, with 12 laps to go in this race, that was an awesome dress rehearsal for Escalante. If he can find himself in that exact position on the last lap, he knows he's got the juice to get by him. So
all 3 riders looking back.
I know, I'm like,
all 3 of them. Hopefully somebody got a picture of that. That'd be a good one. All 3 riders looking back, see where they're at, see if they're clear. Ty Scott knows there's nobody there. Richie Escalante will know it's his teammate, so he's not going to get too much friendly fire, I don't think, at the moment. And it's all going to be about running down the number 2 and trying to hassle him.
We'll see when this lap comes by, because I don't think that this is going to be like the fastest lap of the race. And sometimes this happens, like take a breather, nobody's going to pass me. Let's see what happens. Only Herrin knows if he was completely 100% wide open on that banking last time by the stripe too.
Well, you can see Josh wants to lead every lap down into turn 1. He feels comfortable there. He doesn't want to be following people through there. And but Escalante and Ty Scott now, they've got the measure a little bit of the number 2 as far as especially that run out of turn 6 all the way back to the tri-oval through the chicane and things like that. So these 3 are going to be tied together now, Greg, for the next 10-12 laps. And now you just kind of get to the spot where you're not playing games, but you've got to get your mind thinking about what your plan is going to be with 2 laps, 3 laps to go. What are your intentions? What are you going to do? Where can you try to make passes? As Ty Scott pulls up along the outside, almost looked to me like he maybe rolled out of it a little bit to let Herrin again lead down into turn 1.
Very interesting what we're seeing unfolding, but you don't want to sleep on Herrin, because if he pulls the trigger on you and gets a second through this infield because you think the pace was slowing down, and they went right into the 150s, Jay. So 148.8 for Herrin was his best lap, 150 flat, 150.2 for Escalante, and a 149.9 for Ty Scott. So you can see clearly that those riders that lap dropped a second, but Herrin might be doing the whole cat and mouse thing.
And it's a frustrating thing for the M4 team as well, because I'm not sure if Ty Scott's going to know that he's got this penalty. And the last thing he's going to want to do is thwart the efforts of his teammate to try to win the race if Ty doesn't feel like he can get to the front and pull out to that 2-second lead. So there's some things that are going to happen here that maybe the riders aren't aware of. And I think for Ty Scott, if he knew that he had this penalty, and if he didn't feel, as a rider, if you're going to have the pace to pull away by 2 seconds, he might let his teammate back through and let him deal with what could be a race-winning pass on Herrin.
I just climbed over the wall to talk to Chris Ulrich about that penalty being assessed, and I asked if that information would go on to the pit board that is actually not at the pit lane, it's on the backside of this racetrack, if they would relay that information to Ty Scott, and he said, yeah, that's something that we do need to let the rider know. So in the next couple of minutes, Ty will become aware of the fact that that 1.72 second penalty has been assessed for that track cut.
And the hardest part about that, Jamie, is as a rider, you start thinking to yourself, well, what did I do? Where did I gain an advantage? What had happened? And then it's the whole psychology of what's going on. When you're trying to race at the speeds these guys are going, you're trying to make a plan, you're trying to make a move. If he gets that, he's going to want to try to lead down into turn 1. So we'll see if we can get an eye on the pit board and see if that thing says anything to him to where it could get that message across.
Because keep in mind, here in motorcycle road racing, no on-bike communication. These riders don't have radios in their ears, so their crew cannot radio to them. So the only communication, like Jamie said, is that pit board. So there are just about 10 laps to go in the Daytona 200 with Josh Herrin leading Escalante and Scott. We'll be back with more race action.
Josh Herrin and that number 2 machine out in front, and Rod, we're already seeing on this lap 2 Suzuki's running in deep into a couple of corners.
Yeah, first Tyler Scott in the first horseshoe, and then Richie Escalante in the second. That's just the pace that Josh Herrin is putting up through the infield. Every lap he kind of keeps trying to make the break, but he's not able to do as we see the first sector again. The mistake for Scott cost him a second.
Yeah, and for Josh Herrin, still in those low 57s in that first sector, trying to push on. Last time around, in the last few laps, pace wasn't quite as hot, but we've seen it from Herrin a few times whenever he's just trying to drop that hammer at different moments, and looks like he's trying to do it again here.
Yeah, and last lap they were a little bit slower as well. They had to follow that lapper through the chicane, so that held them up a little bit. But you can just kind of see with Richie Escalante, he kind of catches this group and then he fades back a little bit. Last time before they changed tires, we seen him as the tires wore off. He started losing the leaders, so we'll see what Richie can do.
Obviously, we've got that time penalty for Tyler Scott. That's been taken into effect on the timing tower on the left-hand side of the screen, but for Richie Escalante, he needs to make sure that he's able to be in that mix. Ty's not really going to know what's going on for his penalty, Raj, but his teammate needs to work with him now.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough for Tyler Scott to try to overcome that penalty, to be able to pull out a 1.7 seconds over Herrin is not going to be easy here with 9 laps to go. He looks like Scott's really pushing hard, a little bit wide there into turn 1. You can see Josh, what he's trying to do. Just if he can't make a mistake, just keep trying to put his head down and put the pressure. Again, Richie Escalante in deep into the first horseshoe.
Yeah, Ty Scott looks like the fastest rider in this group for much of the race, but it's been Josh Herrin that's been out in front on that number 2 Ducati for most of this race, chasing down that 3rd consecutive Daytona 200 victory. And right now he's just in front of the number 70 of Ty Scott and Richie Escalante.
Here's a list of those riders with back-to-back wins. As you can see, Josh Herrin is on it right now, going for his 3rd in a row. No one has ever done that in the history of the Daytona 200.
And Greg, when we look back at this and we think about the Daytona 200 today, with 9 laps to go, this is the lap that Herrin, to me, has broken the will of the guys behind him. We've seen mistakes from both Ty Scott and Richie Escalante. He's gone 55.7 in the first split. That's coming off a 49.9 the lap before. He's gone 48.8 in the race, but right now Herrin has his lap down. This is going to be like a qualifying lap for him in the sense that he wants to go by his pit board or look back coming out of the International Horseshoe, and when he sees this gap, that's just going to motivate him to try to keep pushing even harder to increase that gap. Now, I'm not sure what's going on with the M4 boys, but I saw Ty Scott run wide in the first horseshoe. Escalante did it again in the second horseshoe on the same lap. And then last lap through, we saw Escalante run a little bit wide there. Again, when they come across the line this time, it's going to be Herrin by 1.4 seconds right now over Escalante. So it's, even though it shows Ty Scott on track in second, it is actually Escalante 1.4 seconds back. So you got to remember, it's not Ty Scott right now that Herrin's racing against, even though on track, Ty Scott is behind Herrin. It's that guy right there in second place right now, the 54.
Jason, it could be. We just got word that the 70 penalty that was assessed is under review again for Ty Scott.
Yeah.
So we're going to wait to hear from race control.
Great, okay.
With about 7.5 laps to go and see if what we're seeing on the racetrack is actually what's going on. The weird thing is, a couple laps ago when they slowed their pace down to like 150 and then lap traffic 151, it was almost like Josh Herrin was able to control like the focus of these two riders. They both ran wide in corners and in the slower pace, and it was very strange, but whatever it was, Josh Herrin is controlling this race, and he was controlling it before.
Another 55 in that first sprint. And I'm sorry to keep dwelling on that. It's just that this is the tale of what this race has been for the number 2. His ability to get through the infield, maybe with some of those parts that you were talking about before that they've got this year that they didn't have last year, some of the things that were available to them, it's made it easier for him to get through those things. And I'm glad to hear that race control is actually doing that as well, Greg. I think that you have to look at what the intent was there. The intent was that Herrin got up underneath him and he used a little bit of that runoff. So we'll see how that plays out. Herrin right now went 48.661 the last lap. That was his personal best lap of the race. So as they come to the tri-oval again, Greg, we're going to have about 7 laps to go. There's back markers about 5-6 seconds up the road. There's a couple guys that are going to be looking at.
Wow,
how about a 48.2?
Come on. A 148.2. A new track record. 148.3 for Escalante. 148.3 for Ty Scott. The race record from last year was a 148.6. So Josh Herrin has pulled the pin. He's trying to get away, and he is doing an outstanding job of it. Incredible. Hannah?
Greg, I think that really speaks to his mindset. Josh Herrin will be the first person to tell you when he's really stressed or he's really feeling the pressure. Or even, you know, during the Superbike Championship finale last year when he was saying he was so nervous. Heading into this weekend, he told me, this is just really exciting. It's fun for me. There's really not a lot at stake here other than, you know, making race history, being the first rider to ever win 3 in a row and his 4th Daytona 200 victory potentially. But he's happy that he grew up coming to this racetrack. It's just a really special place for him. And now he's got his son here and he's just feeling really relaxed and being able to share that same kind of racing legacy with his son growing up. So he's been so calm all weekend long, and I know his competitors probably hate to hear it, but that is why he is just absolutely ripping this late in the race.
And when you look at it right now, you see that blue flag out. That's for the 2 that are going to be ahead of Herrin. He's going to catch them in the most perfect spot you can catch them, Greg. He's going to go by both of these guys by the time he gets to the tri-oval. It will be interesting to see if the Suzukis are going to be close enough to get by both bikes that I think Herrin will be able to get past before they get into the infield. Here's the 2 Suzukis now fighting amongst themselves down around the bottom of the banking. Escalante and Ty Scott side by side. They're not able to use any draft at all at this point as Josh Herrin goes off into turn 1. He's got by one of the back markers, but his lead now, Greg, as he goes 47-8. 47-8 for Josh Herrin. He's got both those back markers in between these 2 guys now, and he's really shown that he's able to just drop the hammer on them and get these lap times consistent.
I just want to let you know that the lap record around this racetrack was 2024 Richie Escalante in qualifier number 1 at a 147.833. That's qualifying. That's making sure that there's just enough fuel in the bike, that you have fresh tires. And Josh Herrin just went 147.879.
Yeah, and you can see those are when I saw the blue flag in the chicane, I thought that the 2 back markers, if Josh got off into the infield ahead of them, that would make it a lot of hard work, and now he's completely out of the picture. So for Escalante and Ty Scott now, it's a matter of being able to just do the best that they can. With 6 laps to go, though, Greg, I think it's going to be pretty hard to close down this gap. As we can't even see, really, you can't even see Herrin in the picture anymore.
It is unbelievable what Josh Herrin has been able to do this late in the race.
1.5 seconds he's pulled out in that first split.
And now we have heard that the penalty was under review for the number 70 is now gone. So no penalty for Tyler Scott. He's in 2nd place on the racetrack, and he gets to race for his podium. Uncorked.
I think that's a great call that Race Direction went back and looked at that again. So when I looked at it, Greg, and Ty Scott had come across the line ahead of Richie Escalante and the time penalty wasn't involved, I think that's a good move. Now these guys have got to get their head down. Anything they may have left with 5 to go, they're going to have to put it to use as Herrin screams across the line again at a 48.3. The 2 Suzukis behind 49.9s. So it is now up to 3.3 seconds, and that's put a lot of pressure on these 2 teammates.
It looks like something bouncing around on the racetrack. Yeah, not quite sure what that was. It may have been on there before, but falling off from somebody else. Looks like both riders have their knee pucks on. If you're new to motorcycle road racing, those are like hard plastic knee pucks that Velcro onto their leather protective suits. So when you wear those out, you can replace them. But that's what they skip off the ground when they're leaned over at full lean angle. As Richie Escalante now trying to put some daylight between himself and his teammate. But the lap time that he would have to do right now to reel in Josh Herrin with only 4.5 laps to go is incredible. There he is, the number 2, Josh Herrin. The Celtic Economy Lubin Tire Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati of Josh Herrin. With 7 laps to go, he uncorked 2 incredible laps. As we look to the left part of your screen, Jay, this is what we were talking about a minute
let's have
ago.
a look. Oh, did he catch his knee puck? Maybe no. I'm not sure what happened here. Oh yeah, it's the 2nd bike. So it definitely looked like a knee puck came off, but it was hard to tell.
Yeah, knee pucks are red. That was like a black piece of plastic.
Also noticed this lap that Ty Scott lost a lot of time in that first split. So he was almost a full second behind Escalante in that first split. So we'll see if Ty's running into some sort of problems. As Escalante's got the chase on now. Escalante was a 10th quicker in the first split. He was 3/10 quicker, 2/10 quicker on the second split. So he hasn't given up, has he, Richie Escalante?
He would never give up. That is for sure. as Josh Herrin now has this race in control, so he can give up a 10th here, a 10th there, and then gain it back whenever he wants. Jason, when you look at breaking this racetrack into 3 different sectors, Josh Herrin has had, for the last couple of years, sector number 1, the infield, in his back pocket, and this is the best I've seen this motorcycle look, considering that this is the first year of adjustable front end parts and adjustable rear end parts that haven't happened in next gen Supersport, for his team to take advantage of it in a couple of short days. The test that they had at Roebling Road before they got here, and a couple days until this race, they have done a magnificent job of putting a motorcycle that Josh Herrin feels comfortable on.
Yeah, and I really feel that Josh has fun doing this. I mean, like, I promise you, when he looks back out of the International Horseshoe every lap, he's probably screaming under his helmet like he's just loving what he's doing right now, you know. And he's heads off into turn 6, and he's just continuing to put these laps down, 49.5. Even though Escalante was a half a second quicker, man, when you look at the screen right now, it's 2.9 seconds. It looks a lot long. It looks a lot bigger than that, doesn't it? It looks a lot bigger than 3 seconds. But Herrin right now is just in some great form, both on the Superbike last year and here at Daytona. He's just got this place dialed.
And I also want to note, in 4th place is Peter Hickman. What a job he's doing, 23 seconds back. Be 4th at the Daytona 200. Brandon Posh in 5th. True Love Eslick, and then the other True Love in 8th place.
Ty Scott again has brought himself back into this. He was almost 7/10 down to his teammate on that last lap. So a couple mistakes might have been made by Ty on the lap. We just didn't have our cameras on him at that moment. But he's kind of found his form, and he's back in behind Escalante now as they click off another lap. We're looking at 3 to go. Blue flags are out. There's about 3 or 4 bikes 2 to 3, 4 seconds ahead of Herrin at the moment. You're going to see those 2 Suzukis. They just came across the tri-oval. They were in the back of our shot. It's 3.6. Greg, he just ran 48.7 with 3 to go. And now I remember last year him running 48.6, I think, with 2 to go. So he's kind of just doing what he does. He's just grinding these laps out. And I also believe these are very comfortable laps for Josh. I don't think that he feels like he's having to do anything too dastardly to keep this space between these 2 guys.
Plus, you have a field right now, too, of lap traffic that are experienced now with this deep in the race. 54 laps under their belt. For a lot of them, 52, 53 laps. Ooh, there was a rider, the 212 that we saw go off track early on in the race, as Herrin's carving right through, slicing through that lap traffic.
He's literally having fun. I promise you right now. Josh is out there, and even though he's working hard, he's catching these guys at the right spots. He's making all the right calls. That's experience through the years of being able to come up on people. He's making up his mind on where he's going to pass these guys. He's thinking to himself, even when you're 3 seconds back, you see that next back marker up in front of you. As a rider, you're already starting to think, where am I going to catch this person? What can I do as a rider to make it to where that person's not going to slow me up too much? And that could even be hanging back a little bit so that you don't follow them through the middle of a corner, like the chicane here. Sometimes if you hold back a little bit, your drive will be better on the way out than it would be if you ran up onto the back of somebody.
I just can't believe that 51 laps into this race, Josh Herrin was able to uncork a 147.879.
Yeah,
just a couple hundredths off of the qualifying record set here. What a performance we have seen from the Californian, Josh Herrin.
2 to go. 48.6 in traffic.
Not too shabby. This is the shot of Herrin slicing through traffic. Look at that. Just get it turned and pull the trigger. And a little wheel in the air. This is what the crew was doing when they saw it.
I promise you right now, they're more nervous than Josh right now because, you know, as he heads off into the International Horseshoe once again and gets himself rocketed out of here. He doesn't even bother looking back anymore. He knows that he's got this gap.
Look, it's still a lap and a half to go. Anything can happen.
Absolutely.
But when you really look at what Josh Herrin has been able to accomplish in his career, the early career success, the mid part of his career, Josh, whoa, hey now. Yeah, he's still working. Keep in mind, by the way, the Panigale V2, not with electronic aids, so Josh is in control of the rear tire, all with his right wrist. And the talent obviously shows. But Jay, this particular race has not been an easy one at all. These couple red flags and all the different strategies you have for pit stops, and a tip of the cap to the crew. I mean, his crew for the Celtic Economy Lube and Tire Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati team put together incredible pit stops to help him.
Pit stop, we had a little fault with the front jack, and that was it. But I mean, when you think about what this crew has done for 3 straight years, that's the worst pit stop that they had done. I mean, they've just done an amazing job for 3 straight years getting this guy in and out of the pits. And what they lacked a little bit today with that front stop, and that's just a simple little thing, a little accident that happened, their rider made up for it on his outlap, didn't it? So
yes.
All the time that they've paid him off by getting him in and out of the pits, absolutely perfect. He paid them back a little bit today with a great first lap out on that 3rd stint.
And that's having that ace card in your back pocket. And we're hearing again a little bit of a sprinkle, but good news is, as we come to the line, there's going to be 1 lap to go. The white flag is out for Josh Herrin. In all the history of the Daytona 200, to think about all the names that have raced the high banks of Daytona, legends in their own right that have won races and world championships all over the place, to Josh Herrin to navigate this last 3.5 miles, to stand on top of the pile all by himself with 3 race wins in a row in the Daytona 200 is incredible. What a career Josh Herrin has had, ups and downs, the willingness over his entire career, Jay, to get off of a factory bike, not have a ride, to get onto anything anybody will put underneath him, to keep himself in the mix, going to Moto 2, coming back to the U.S. to see him as the 2024 MotoAmerica Superbike champ, and now on this last lap put himself in the best position ever to win his 3rd in a row.
Yeah, and you think about the frustration right now for the 2 guys behind that really looked like they had the measure of Josh at least to be able to give him a fight till the very end, but it was just a couple little mistakes in those infield turns where this guy was applying the pressure all day through the infield. There was a couple of mistakes that were made in both those horseshoes that allowed the gap to continue to grow. And then, of course, Greg, as you said earlier, a 47.879 with about 6-7 laps to go. That's an incredibly fast time. And I tell you right now, when you go up on this banking for the final time, all you want to do is get it into 6th gear to where if something weird happens, you can coaster on home. So he's going to be pretty much screaming in his helmet right now as he comes to the tri-oval.
Here he comes to the line. Josh Herrin on the back of 2 Daytona 200 victories. He has got his hands off the bar and he knows what's at stake. History made for the number 2 from California. Josh Herrin with his 3rd in a row and 4th career Daytona 200 victory. Richie Escalante in 2nd and Tyler Scott will round out your podium. What a race, what a performance by this team. Celebrations all around for the Celtic Economy Lube Plus Tire Warhorse HSBK Ducati. Wow, Josh Herrin, what a weekend. And as that'll tell you, the first rider in history for 3 consecutive Daytona 200 wins. How do you like that, Jason?
Wow, I mean, it's a great accomplishment. You think of all the laps you have to do around this place. You think about how difficult this place is and how it can go good and bad for so long. This is a team that has their stuff together, Greg, and to be able to do it 3 years in a row, I mean, it's never been done, so it just tells you how hard that is. And this guy's a grinder, man. He will just keep applying that pressure like he did as he goes over to some of the fans and, of course, his pit board guys over there on the back straight.
Of course, everybody enjoying this as Josh has a burnout in the grass. Oh boy, take it easy, man. Last thing you want to do is ding that thing up before you bring it into victory lane. What a run by Josh Herrin. I mean, listen, we knew that what he was doing was possible, but the team to put their heads down and figure out how many laps we have left, what's the pit strategy going to be, and the raw talent of Josh Herrin to be able to maintain the speed he needed to on those tires were worn out. I mean, you go back and look before that last pit stop and you saw that Ducati spinning up. You saw it starting to move around on the front end. Incredible.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, the thing is those don't really affect him that much. Like I've said on so many of our telecasts in the past, I've seen him at track days and I've been out there riding around with him before, and he does some pretty amazing things on a motorcycle, and he's got a lot of bike control. And somehow or another, I always feel like that really helps lend a hand when you have that much bike control in setup and things like that. And for Josh, you know, again, can't say enough about the team and him and what they've done.
All right, we'll step away. When we get back, we're going to talk to Josh Herrin and find out how that race went for him. 57 laps in the book, and the only rider in history to win 3 in a row.
Rog, we've just seen Josh Herrin take that 3rd consecutive Daytona 200 victory, his 4th in his career, and that final stint, that last 10 laps, we saw him straight down to lap record pace during it. Those 3 or 4 laps, that's what opened up that margin.
Yeah, and also he got through traffic really well, but for Josh, I mean, he just did the perfect job there. He put himself in the right spot, overcame a little mistake on pit lane. But you talk about coming out and doing a 47.8. The previous race record was a 48.6, and for Josh, that infield, he earned it. It wasn't the fastest, bike. Josh won this Daytona 200 by putting the infield together. And I mean, you just can't say enough. I mean, it's hard to win one Daytona 200, more or less 3 in a row. And I mentioned it last year as well. I mean, Josh is really putting his name in the record book the last couple years, and today, and that ride he just did was one of the most impressive rides I've seen.
Yeah, plenty of times in that final stint as well, where he's putting all that faith in the front of that bike and riding it as hard as he can, even whenever he'd open up that gap of around about 4 or 5 seconds to the chasing Suzukis. But for Escalante and for Ty Scott, we saw them underneath lap record pace as well, just didn't quite have enough to go with Herrin.
There's just those last 8-7 laps where Josh really started to open up that gap, and he kind of broke the draft and really just kind of broke him. And then once he pulled away, we've seen him starting to make mistakes down into the horseshoes. And for Josh there, he's looking back and he's slowly pulling away. And man, he just did what he had to do. That was such a good race for him. But Richie and Tyler Scott, incredible pace by them, doing low 49s the whole race.
Yeah, pit stops in the draft proving critical here at the Daytona 200, and the race victory for Josh Herrin, wrapping up that 3rd in a row here at the 200.
The Daytona 200 is brought to you by Pirelli Tire. Pirelli, power is nothing without control. And by NXT Bets. Play MotoAmerica for cash. The Daytona 200 is live on top sportsbook and DFS platforms.
Josh Herrin on his cool-off lap as he's going to make his way to victory lane on the back of that race record lap of a 147.879. Let's take a look at these Pirelli race results. You have Herrin with the big dub, Escalante and Tyler Scott. Just 0.08 of a second separated those two at the line. Peter Hickman coming in. You think maybe for Hickman this might get him motivated to come back again? Possibly. Posh Eslick, the True Love brothers there in 7th and 8th. Michael Dunlop in 9th. And Joe LeMandry Jr., a good run for him, back in 10th place. Now, Jay, I do want to make note that the old lap record was a 148.625, and Herrin, Escalante, and Ty Scott all had a lap that was under the previous race record. But it was Herrin who was so close to the qualifying race record set last year by Escalante. So now Herrin's going to start enjoying the celebration. In he goes. Think there's a burnout, Jay?
I already did one. I just watched him do a one-handed burnout down pit lane with the American flag. So looking out my window has its advantages, but there will be another one for sure.
B-Twin Power getting after it on that Ducati.
Let's fucking get it!
And Herrin excitement with his team, and why not? What an absolute crazy race that was for everybody, with the couple of red flags that we had, with the rain sprinkling down. And now the celebrations begin for he and his team.
We almost didn't fucking come.
So Josh Herrin getting his helmet off after that magnificent race victory.
Good job.
And with the red flag, we only had 7 riders that were remaining on the lead lap. With Araldo Faraci. What a run from Herrin. Embraced with he and his wife Rachel. And what a run in history for Josh Herrin. We'll have to go back and look at those last 10 laps as really the break in this one. That 147.879 followed up with a low 148. It really was able to get him 3.5 seconds that broke that 5.3 second margin of victory.
We gotta go to interviews with Josh.
So in victory lane for the number 2 bike. What an effort too that Josh and his crew were able to put together, Jay. As it was uncertain a few weeks ago if he was even going to be able to make this race, they were able to get there. And another victory for Dunlop Tires. Of course, we love the Daytona 200 because there's always a tire war here, but in this case, this year, Dunlop comes out on top. For Richie Escalante and Ty Scott, congratulations all around for, and of course, Josh Herrin gets that watch. Let's get down to Hannah.
Presenting the Rolex for winning his 4th Daytona 200 and 3rd in a row, President of Daytona International Speedway, Frank Kelleher. On behalf of the Speedway, Josh, we're presenting you with the, he's still celebrating over here. A lot going on. Josh, we've got something I think you're going to be pretty interested in here. No, I think his family's more important. Griffin's really excited to be a part of the celebration.
Congrats, buddy. Josh, on behalf of the France family, the entire staff here at Daytona International Speedway, it is an honor to welcome you back to Victory Lane 3 times in a row, 4 Daytona 200 victories under your belt. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I got a brew watch coming for you.
Okay.
All right, Josh, it was definitely one heck of a race. We'll keep that safe for you. A lot going on, a lot to unpack here. Take us through it. You did your fastest laps toward the end of the race. How was the bike feeling underneath you?
Yeah, it felt amazing, man. With that drama in the pits, I was really scared. Put my head down as hard as I possibly could there to catch back up to Tyler. And I don't know what was happening with them. You know, I saw they sucked up to me, so I was like, okay, I'm going to save some energy, save some tire. No point in trying to pull away when I know they're just going to get me in the draft. And then I looked back and something was going on. I saw him look down at his front one time, and I said, you know what, this is my chance. I got some lappers coming up. I'm going to put my head down right now. And Zach, put my head down and try to charge, and it worked out. So huge hats off to my entire Warhorse HSBK Racing team. Those economy lube and tire pit stops were fire today. Thank you to Ducati USA. Huge shout out to Brew Watch Co. for stepping up, sponsoring us. Binky Bros, got some toddlers. Go make sure you guys get your stuff. Man, everybody that's involved, Lead Seal, Watson Services, Jamaican Bearings, just everybody that was involved with this whole program. You know, we had a lot of people saying they didn't want us to come and even do this race. And Bobby asked me, you know, how bad do you want to do it? I said, man, I want to do this more than anything. You take everything that you got coming for me. If we did win, I don't care what we got to do to get here. We're coming. So thank you to Bobby for letting me come. Thank you to the DeNaples family. Thank you to Faraci for being such a legend, man. Thank you to my family. Thank you to Rachel. We got twins on the way. Thank you to Griffin, my family, everything. This is amazing, you know, to be tied with Eslick and have Duhamel and Scott Russell mentioned in the same sentences leading up to this event is an honor for me. Thank you to Dunlop Tires for giving me an amazing set of tires out there. Three Daytona wins in a row. I think it's a first in history. It's an amazing feeling, and to be completely honest, I thought luck was just going to wear out for us. So huge thank you to everybody involved.
Congrats, Josh. Moving right on over to Jamie.
For the 4th year in a row, Richie Escalante able to get a 5th place finish, but it's the first time being able to make it all the way up to the podium. Richie, for you, that battle that you had first with Josh, but then with your teammate Tyler Scott, you certainly found something today.
Yes, today, honestly, a difficult weekend for us. I not have the best feeling during the weekend, especially on the time attack, and I don't have the confidence this morning. I say, okay, let's back to the setting from last year. I'm very strong and start with a new bike in the race. And in the race, I feel really good in the beginning. We battle with some different riders, and after the first pit stop, I feel very good, good pace. And then the red flag, the rain is coming, and the second start and also the last 3 stars, I feel good. And I think today, 7 or 8 laps to go, Tyler make a mistake in the first horseshoe and me also make a mistake in the second horseshoe, and I think both lost the race in that lap. And yeah, but happy to finish on the podium. Big thanks to my entire team, Hammer, Vision, William, Forester, Suzuki, worker really hard this winter and also this week. It's amazing to finish on the podium in Daytona. Of course, I want to win, but not always is possible to win. So finally, another podium. Super happy. Also thanks to my personal sponsor, Mission Foods, to my family, to everybody, and hope to see you next year. And congrats to Josh Herrin, 3 times Daytona champion.
Congratulations to Richie Escalante finishing second. Hannah?
Third place today, Ty Scott. Ty, take us through it. There's a lot of drama that unfolded out there.
The conditions with the rain, and it was a difficult day for sure, but the whole Vision Wheel M4XR Suzuki team, from the last round last year at MotoAmerica to now, they put in so much hard work, so much training in the off season, a lot of testing. The bike that we have here today is a way better motorcycle than we had last year. I'm more fit than last year. I feel better. I felt like I could go faster, but a few mistakes kind of bridged the gap and I lost Herrin, but overall it was a very good race. The pit stops were perfect, so I can't give enough thanks to all those guys, and the bike feels amazing going into the first round here in MotoAmerica.
Incredible effort, very strong ride by third place today, Ty Scott, guys.
Incredible run from the entire field. Anybody who finishes the Daytona 200, tip of the cap. But this guy has done it. He stands alone in history as the 3rd Daytona 200 winner in a row, and he does it off of a record-breaking lap. He's going to look at that and enjoy it. Well, congratulations to Josh Herrin and his team and the entire field for completing the 83rd running of the Daytona 200. We can't wait to do it again next year. For Hannah, Jamie, and Jason, I'm Greg. We'll see you later.